Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Marta del Castillo. Marta del Castillo was born on June 19, 1991, in Seville, Spain, to parents Eva Casanova and Antonio del Castillo. At the age of 17, Marta was a normal high school student like everyone else. Then her life changed completely. On January 24, 2009, Marta was in the middle of a conversation with her best friend, Silvia Fernandez. She abruptly ended the conversation, explaining that she had to leave quickly because her boyfriend, Miguel Carcano, was waiting for her downstairs. Marta told Silvia that she needed to talk to Miguel to clear up some issues in their relationship and promised to fill her in on everything when she returned. Marta ran into her father in the hallway and he advised her against getting on Miguel's motorcycle. In response, Marta just gave her father a light kiss on the cheek. She left her home at 5:30 p.m., and as the hours passed and she failed to return, her family started to worry. Marta's mother reached out to several people, and they all gave the same answer: Marta was probably with Miguel, who would likely know where she was. However, when they tried to contact Miguel, he didn't answer their calls. As a result, Marta's father decided to visit Miguel's house. Despite ringing the doorbell multiple times, no one answered the door. They eventually got in touch with Samuel Benitez, a close friend of Miguel's who claimed to have seen Marta that night. According to Samuel, Miguel dropped Marta off at his house at midnight, which was plausible considering it was only 11:45. Marta's family became more worried, and at 2 a.m. that morning, they reported her missing to the police. At that point, they had no idea that Marta's disappearance would become one of the most highly publicized cases in the country's history. 4 hours after Marta's disappearance was reported, the police identified Miguel Carcano, Marta's boyfriend, as a suspect. Despite this, a third report was filed at 1:30 p.m. But the authorities failed to take immediate action. The family grew increasingly frustrated with the delay. However, 17 hours after the initial request for help, the police initiated a search for Marta. As time went by, Marta's family took matters into their own hands and started collecting statements from Marta's relatives and friends. They also organized a press conference on January 27, 2009, and initiated a campaign to find her. A large protest took place in Seville the day after Marta's disappearance, with 2,000 people demanding her safe return under the slogan, "We are all Marta." A second demonstration on February 7 drew around 3,000 people, and the case received widespread media attention. After 21 days of searching, the police finally found Miguel Carcano on February 13. The 20-year-old confessed to Marta's murder and revealed that he had dumped her body into the Guave River near his apartment. However, he claimed he did not act alone and implicated Samuel Benitez as an accomplice in disposing of the body. Samuel accepted responsibility for his role in the crime. Further investigation led to the identification of additional accomplices, including Francisco Javier Garcia Marin, aka El Cuco, a troubled minor, Francisco Delgado, Carcano's brother, and Maria Garcia, Francisco Delgado's girlfriend. All 5 suspects were arrested and interrogated, but their statements were inconsistent. Meanwhile, a thorough search for Marta's body in the river began. On February 16, Miguel repeated his statement to a judge claiming he had only admitted to the crime due to police pressure and was not involved in Marta's murder. Miguel Carcano changed his testimony on March 18, claiming that he and El Cuco had violated Marta with a knife before strangling her. He then took Marta's body to Delgado's house and disposed of it in a garbage container. However, Marta's father accused Delgado's girlfriend, Maria Garcia, and theorized that Marta's body may have been destroyed, as Maria Garcia's father worked at a biological waste crematorium. Despite this theory gaining media attention, the police continued searching for Marta's body. On November 16, 2009, El Cuco was moved to a supervised apartment because he had exceeded the maximum time allowed for confinement. He was awaiting trial, which took place in February 2011. El Cuco was acquitted of abuse and murder charges due to insufficient evidence, but was sentenced to 2 years and 11 months in a juvenile detention center for covering up for Miguel. The trial for the 4 defendants Miguel, Samuel, Delgado, Maria Garcia involved in the case began on October 17, 2011. During the trial, Miguel Carcano admitted to hitting Marta with an ashtray during a heated argument, which led to her death. He also revealed that his previous statements about abusing Marta were false. The investigation revealed inconsistencies in the stories told by Delgado, Maria Garcia, and Samuel. They claimed to have no knowledge of Marta's whereabouts after her death. They alleged that Miguel fabricated the entire story to reduce his guilt. However, forensic analysis uncovered incriminating evidence. On November 22, 2011, the forensic police discovered traces of Marta's blood on Miguel's jacket. A mix of Miguel DNA and Maria Garcia's DNA was also found on a roll of fabric tape. Additionally, a DNA match from Delgado and Maria Garcia was detected on an extension cable, believed to have been used to strangle Marta. This was surprising, given the accused had consistently maintained they had only been at the crime scene early in the morning and had no knowledge of the incident. When confronted with the new evidence, Maria Garcia was accused of violating Marta's body in attempting to cover up the crime. A detailed analysis of the crime scene revealed up to 5 fingerprints on 3 alcohol bottles, with 1 belonging to El Cuco. As the investigation drew to a close, the 4 suspects were under intense scrutiny from the public. Their trials were heavily guarded by the police, and the prosecution presented a substantial case against Miguel, Samuel, Delgado, and Maria Garcia. The trial involved 90 witnesses, including national police officers and experts. The prosecution also presented 30,000 pH monitorings, crime scene photographs, DNA evidence, and other items found at the house on Leon 13. The trial sparked a massive public outcry, drawing large crowds that pushed against the police barrier. The public requested to view Marta's body and also wanted to catch a glimpse of Miguel, the accused. Despite Delgado and Maria Garcia attempting to conceal themselves with hats and sunglasses, however, they were still unable to escape the crowd's attention. A woman approached them, shouting insults, while others tried to remove their sunglasses and pushed them forward, forcing them to reveal their faces to the surrounding crowd. During the trial, El Cuco's mother gave an interview with her face covered, insisting on her son's innocence and stating that neither she nor El Cuco had any knowledge about Marta's body. Despite being labeled a liar by journalists, she received €10,000 for the interview. A key witness then came forward, a taxi driver who had given Delgado a ride on the night of the crime. The driver explained that he had been extra cautious with his passengers, as a colleague had been murdered recently. He recalled picking up a bald, bearded man matching Delgado's description, who had a plastic bag and stared at him intently. The driver stated that he dropped Delgado off on Leon's 13th Street, exactly where the crime took place, and charged him €8 for the ride. However, Delgado's defense lawyer questioned the driver's statement, pointing out that the fare for the 2-kilometer ride should have been €5, not €8, which cast doubt on the driver's testimony. Marta's parents took the stand and described the immense pain they were experiencing due to the situation. They had to quit their jobs, start taking psychiatric medication, and even develop depression. Their other 2 daughters, Marta's sisters, were also going through a terrible time. The jury's verdict in January 2012 did not bring the family the satisfaction they were hoping for. Miguel was the only person responsible for Marta's murder and was sentenced to 21 years and 3 months in prison. Additionally, he was banned from living in the city where Marta's family resides for the next 30 years. He to pay part of the trial costs and compensate Marta's parents with €280,000 for the moral damage caused by her murder and disappearance. Each of her sisters was also awarded €30,000. In contrast, Delgado and Samuel were released due to lack of evidence placing them at the crime scene at the time of the murder. However, the following year, they demanded that Marta's family pay for the trial costs, adding to the family's distress. Marta's father expressed his intention to seek justice beyond Spain's borders, as he believed the country's system was outdated. He even considered taking Marta's case to Strasbourg, home to the European Parliament and the European Court of Human Rights. In December 2011, Marta's mother wrote a heartfelt letter to Miguel, who was in prison at the time. She asks him to return Marta's body so they can end the long suffering they have endured. She longed to give Marta a proper burial, where she could visit her, bring flowers, and talk to her. Unfortunately, the letter went unanswered. On January 24, 2012, 3 years after Marta's disappearance, demonstrations took place in various Spanish cities and towns, demanding justice for the young girl. As a result, Miguel faced threats from fellow inmates and attempted to take his own life. He was then transferred to a specialized therapy unit where he had limited contact with the outside world, including no visitors or phone calls. During his imprisonment, Miguel created multiple versions of the crime, with as many as 7 different accounts. This led to several lawyers withdrawing from his case due to inconsistencies. In his latest testimony, presented in 2013, he implicated someone close to him as the perpetrator of the crime. Miguel described an argument between him and his brother, Delgado, over the mortgage for their house at Leon 13. The dispute began when Miguel sent a letter to the family stating that he no longer wanted to cover for Delgado. Miguel stated that a disagreement over a fraudulent loan led to a physical confrontation. The situation became violent and Delgado allegedly threatened his younger brother with a weapon. When Marta intervened, she was fatally struck with the butt of Delgado's gun. After the incident, Delgado made a phone call, but the recipient and the content of the conversation are unknown. Delgado then left the house, leaving Marta's lifeless body behind. El Cuco arrived, and Delgado asked for his help in disposing of the body. They used a wheelchair to transport the body to the Mahala farm in Laneda, where they buried it. Marta. At first, Marta's parents believed Miguel's story and were grateful to him for telling the truth. They requested that the investigation be reopened, this time focusing on Delgado. However, the prosecution and the judge did not find Marta's statements credible. Marta's father visited Miguel in prison, asking for his cooperation in finding Marta's body. In exchange for Miguel's help, Marta's father offered him a deal. Upon his release from prison, he would give Miguel the house located at Lawn 13, which he had previously purchased. The search for Marta's body became one of the most expensive in the country's history, involving extensive land and sea searches. It seemed impossible for Miguel, Samuel, and another person to transport Marta's body on a motorcycle without incident. During the reenactment, the body fell off the moment the engine started. After Miguel claimed that the body was thrown into a trash bin, the search shifted to the local landfill, which receives all the area's waste. In order to find any relevant clues, the search team estimated that they would need to remove approximately 40,000 tons of waste from the landfill due to the large amount of time that had passed since Marta's disappearance and the massive amount of waste at the landfill. The search for Marta's body lasted 32 days but was unsuccessful. Miguel, the accused, gave investigators 4 different locations where evidence might be found, leading to multiple new searches. However, the searches were hindered by a lack of funds, and at one point, the then Interior Minister Alfredo Perez had to pause the search due to financial constraints. In April 2013, Miguel pointed to Delgado as the real murderer and provided another location where Marta's body could be found, this time near the city of Lake, Canada. Despite having lost credibility due to his previous false versions, a new search was conducted. Miguel went with the police to the area and gave them a general idea of where he claimed to have buried Marta's body in 2009, along with Delgado. The police excavated the soil of 6 farms, focusing on areas with recent earth movements. A total area of 10,000 square meters was scanned, but unfortunately, nothing was found. All the searches were unsuccessful and at the request of Marta's parents. The search was halted until 2015. The public ministry requested that the defendants compensate the Ministry of the Interior for the costs incurred during the search, amounting to $66,329. In a new development, an individual named Oscar, who claimed to be a criminal, approached El Cuco's, Rosalia mother, and pretended to seek a confession. However, his actual intention was to infiltrate and secretly gather information. Over time, Oscar and Rosalia developed a close relationship, meeting every 2 or 3 days and speaking daily on the phone. Rosalia trusted Oscar enough to give him the keys to her house, and they shared secrets and took long walks on the beach together. He gained her trust and affection. Oscar even convinced Rosalia that they would leave the country together once her son's, El Cuco situation was resolved. Meanwhile, Oscar secretly recorded 600 hours of conversations between Rosalia and those around her over a period of 2.5 years. In October 2011, El Cuco was granted temporary release from the juvenile center, where he was being held for covering up for Miguel. During one conversation, Oscar asked El Cuco if he thought the police were following him. El Cuco replied that were, and that the police were trying to find out where they had hidden Marta. This statement incriminated El Cuco and revealed his involvement in Marta's disappearance. Realizing his mistake, El Cuco quickly tried to retract his statement, claiming he had done nothing wrong. Oscar played along as if he hadn't noticed. However, in other recordings, El Cuco made fun of the police's efforts to find the body, and Rosalia criticized the investigators for not examining her phone records closely. Although Oscar worked diligently to record conversations, the 600 hours of recorded material was not presented as evidence in court. It wasn't until 13 years after Marta's disappearance, in 2022, that the recordings led to results. On May 26, 2022, a large crowd of mostly neighbors from Marta's family gathered outside the courthouse to demonstrate their support for a new trial. Rosalia and El Cuco arrived at the courthouse, protected by police. El Cuco was fully covered, wearing a hoodie, sunglasses, gloves, and a mask. Rosalia wore sunglasses, a mask, and a headscarf. In 2011, El Cuco claimed he wasn't at the scene of the crime on Lyon 13th Street. El Cuco said he had gone home around 11:30 p.m. with friends and met his mother's partner, Oscar, who was taking out the trash. Oscar then went upstairs to his apartment and stayed there for the rest of the night. Rosalia claimed she had gone out for drinks with Oscar around 11:30 p.m. and returned home around 1:30 a.m. on January 25th, finding her son asleep. El Cuco admitted that on January 24th, Miguel contacted him for assistance after killing Marta. Miguel requested his help in burying Marta's body, along with Samuel. They used Rosalia's vehicle to travel to Lyon 13, where Delgado is also there. During this time, Rosalia, El Cuco's mother, stayed at a bar until 4:30 in the morning. Upon returning home, she found her son missing. In the end, El Cuco and Rosalia were charged with perjury for hindering prosecution. As a result, El Cuco and Rosalia were sentenced to 2.5 years in prison on June 9, 2022. The judge also imposed a fine of €1,144 on each of them, as well as ordering them to pay €30,000 in civil liability to Marta's parents. Despite the sentencing and fines, Marta's parents were more concerned with finding their daughter's body than seeking monetary compensation. In the same year, the investigative judge allowed an expert to access the mobile phones of Miguel and Marta. Notably, Miguel gave his consent for his phone to be examined, believing it would reveal evidence pointing to Delgado as the actual perpetrator. The primary objective of the investigation was to locate Marta's body, which remained missing. 13 years after Marta's murder, the civil court decided to close the investigation into the search for her body in November 2022. The court declared the investigation period had expired because no new significant evidence had been found. Marta's parents eventually accepted that Miguel would never disclose the location of their daughter's body. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Rosana Galeano. Rosana Galeano was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in the late 1970s to parents Raldo and Graciela. She had two older brothers, Oscar and Gustavo, and a sister, Monica. During this time, Raldo, Rosana's father, worked as a mechanic. In 2001, Jose Arce brought his vintage car to Raldo's workshop for repairs. Jose was born on November 22, 1948. He spent more than 30 years living abroad, primarily in Greece and the United States. During his time in the United States, Jose was convicted of drug trafficking and served a 4-year prison sentence. He returned to Argentina in 1996 and owned 8 properties in a prestigious area of Buenos Aires. Despite their significant age difference, Jose and Rosana began dating shortly after meeting at her father's shop. At the time, Rosana was without a job and kept to herself, while Jose appeared to be financially stable. However, his wealth actually came from his mother, Elsa, who lived in the United States. Jose, who is 52 years old, proposed to Rosana, who is 22 years old. Rosana's mother, Graciela, expressed concerns about their significant age difference. Jose dismissed her worries, claiming that love knows no age. Rosana reassured her mother that she wanted to marry Jose, and they tied the knot on November 17, 2001, after a 7-month courtship. Jose initially thought his friendly and intelligent personality was the reason Rosana was attracted to him. They soon had a son, Geronimo. However, Jose's true nature soon became apparent, a controlling and jealous person. He frequently belittled Rosana and her family, and has eventually turned physically abusive, leaving Rosana feeling trapped and fearful. Jose's ownership of 2 guns added to his intimidating presence, allowing him to maintain control over Rosana. Her family was aware of the situation and the pain it caused. Jose often flaunted his guns in front of visitors or when visiting others. On one occasion, Rosana's brother Oscar witnessed Jose physically assaulting her while they were painting their house. On another occasion, Rosana's father observed bruises on her back, bruises that she explained were caused by Jose dragging her on the ground. Rosana and Jose had their second child, but their relationship continued to deteriorate. Jose's hot temper and lack of respect have repeatedly strained their relationship, making it difficult for her to maintain a healthy home for her children despite her best efforts. The situation was further complicated by Jose's mother, Elsa, who would visit from time to time and exert control over their household decisions. By 2006, Rosana had suffered severe abuse at the hands of Jose and decided to report him to the authorities for domestic violence. A few months later, Rosana filed a second complaint, this time she requesting a medical examination to document her injuries. Rosana opened up to her sister Monica about her struggles, and they made a promise to stay connected and be there for each other whenever Rosana needed assistance. Monica becomes Rosana's rock, comforting and supporting her emotionally during difficult times. Whenever Rosana visited Monica's apartment with her children, Jose would often dictate when they had to return home, threatening to harm her. He frequently belittled Rosana, questioning her ability to be a mother. Ultimately, Rosana decided to leave Jose and move in with Monica, leaving him to stay in their house alone. Rosanna filed another complaint and sought a divorce, which led to a restraining order being issued against Jose. As a result, they were only allowed to meet at a neutral location in El Remanso Exel de la Cruz, as arranged by the court, for Jose to visit their child. During one of her visits, Rosanna confided in Daniel Gonzalez, a married man, who worked as a gardener and lived nearby with his own daughter. Although there were rumors about a relationship between Rosanna and Daniel, this was never confirmed. Meanwhile, Jose continued to make threats against Rosanna, including a disturbing voicemail, in which Jose explicitly threatened to kill her, and she shared this message with her brother Oscar. In 2007, Rosanna met Oscar Lugo at a bar while socializing with friends. He was 32 years old, lived in Marino, and worked in a sewing workshop. They quickly connected, exchanged numbers, and began dating. Oscar was a kind, attentive, and gentleman who listened to Rosanna. At 29 years old, Rosanna felt like she was rediscovering a life she had almost forgotten. However, their budding relationship was soon threatened by Rosanna's ex-husband, Jose. He closely monitored Rosanna's activities and was aware of her new relationship with Oscar. Jose wants to prevent his divorce from Rosanna and is terrified when he hears that Rosanna has started a new relationship. He offers give Rosanna a truck in exchange for ending her relationship with Oscar Lugo, but she refuses. When Rosanna had a severe nervous breakdown, it was Oscar who accompanied her to the hospital. Out of desperation, Jose devised a plan with the help of his mother Elsa. They secretly planned to hire an assassin to kill Rosanna. On January 16, 2008, Rosanna and her sister Monica went to El Reno to pick up Rosanna's two sons, aged 4 and 3, from their father Jose. However, Jose delayed the handover, making excuses. At 9:15 p.m., Jose called Rosanna, claiming their son Geronimo had a fever and that he would take him to the hospital and return him the next day. Rosanna insisted on taking care of Geronimo herself, but the call ended abruptly. Rosanna then sent a casual text message to Oscar Lugo at 9:53 p.m. about their plans for the next day. At 10 p.m., Rosanna and Monica sat down for dinner when Jose called again. This time, Rosanna stepped out into the garden to get better phone reception. Unbeknownst to her, a person was hiding behind the trees. As she was on the phone, the person emerged and shot Rosanna 4 times with a .45 caliber gun. Monica, who was inside, heard the shots and saw Rosanna stumble and collapse. Panicked, Monica tried to call 911 but was unsuccessful. She then asked her boyfriend to alert the police. Meanwhile, Oscar Lugo tried to contact Rosanna at 11 p.m. but couldn't reach her. He then tried to call Monica but got no response. The police investigation revealed that the shooter had entered the property through an adjacent vacant lot. A witness reported seeing someone fleeing through a gap in the fence but couldn't provide a clear description due to the darkness. Jose was questioned by the police and appeared shocked. After requesting a lawyer, he let the lawyer handle the proceedings and left the next day. During a thorough search of the area, a red sweater was discovered that Rosanna's family believed belonged to Jose, which led them to suspect him of the crime. The case quickly gained widespread media attention, shocking the nation and sparking a scandal. Jose and his mother publicly maintained his innocence and criticized Rosanna, claiming that she had multiple sexual partners and that they should be investigated for this crime instead of Jose. Following the incident, Daniel, the gardener, became withdrawn and isolated, refusing to speak to anyone. On the night of Rosanna's funeral, Raldo noticed Jose watching from a distance in a truck, but he did not attend the funeral or offer any condolences. Jose's defense team then shifted their focus to Monica, who was Rosanna's sister and the only witness to the case. They questioned Monica's credibility, pointing out 2 key inconsistencies in her story. Firstly, Monica did not have any blood on her clothes, which raised suspicions about her account of what happened. Secondly, instead of immediately helping her younger sister, Monica chose to run and get her phone. However, this theory lacked supporting evidence. The investigators presented a strong argument that the murder weapon was too heavy for a woman to handle. They also pointed out that the killer likely knew the house well, as they would have been aware that Rosanna had to go outside to get a cell phone signal. This suggests that the crime was planned in advance. During the investigation, Rosanna's sons were cared for by their father and paternal grandmother Elsa, and their grandmother Graciela was allowed to visit them. However, Monica and Oscar are not allowed near the children, as Jose expresses concern for his son's safety. Despite the court's restrictions, the children still wanted to see Aunt Monica, so Jose allowed them to visit her. During these visits, Monica took the children to see a psychologist. Eventually, Graciela was granted visitation rights to her grandchildren, though not guardianship. In an interview, Jose made some serious allegations about Rosanna, claiming she had 4 lovers who all had run-ins with the law. Jose suspects Rosanna of being involved with these men, and she has been gathering information about them for blackmail. Meanwhile, Oscar was given protection as a witness in his sister's case, which included wearing a tracking device and having a police escort. By the end of 2007, investigators still hadn't found enough evidence to charge any of the suspects. However, a significant turning point occurred in January 2008 when Jose was arrested and charged with aggravated homicide. This charge was based on 3 key factors: his connection to the victim, evidence that suggested he had planned the crime in advance, and the fact that multiple people were involved in the crime. On January 28, 2008, the preliminary hearings began. At the hearings, 4 people, including Raldo, Graciela, Monica, and Oscar, described Jose's disturbing behavior, including his repeated use of violence and weapons to threaten others. Rosanna's mother also presented the prosecutor with the last text messages her daughter had sent before her death. The following day, Oscar Lugo, who used to date Rosanna, testified against Jose, provided testimony similar to that of Rosanna's family. According to Oscar Lugo, Jose had tried to ruin his and Rosanna's reputations by spreading false rumors. Oscar Lugo said Rosanna suspected Jose's fabrications were intended to discredit her as she and Jose were about to divorce. Opposite, Jose's lawyer disputed the claims that Jose was emotionally unstable and aggressive. On February 7, 2008, Jose's mother, Elsa, traveled from the United States to testify in a 12-hour investigative session. However, Rosanna's family began to suspect that Jose's mother might have been involved in her murder. This suspicion led Raldo and Graciela's lawyer to consider requesting Jose's mother's arrest. In response, Jose and his mother's lawyer argued that her testimony actually showed she was prioritizing her grandchildren's well-being. According to Elsa's testimony, she purchased houses for them because she believed the divorce settlement would not negatively impact them. The lawyer also denied the media's claim that Jose's mother and Rosanna had a poor relationship. Despite ongoing speculation and media coverage surrounding the circumstances of Rosanna's death, Jose was released on bail and gained custody of his children. Meanwhile, the court deemed it unnecessary to provide police protection for Oscar, Rosanna's brother, who worked as a taxi driver. However, on July 5, 2008, Oscar was attacked by 2 armed men in the early morning. They beat and threatened him for an hour before abandoning him in a vacant lot. Fortunately, Oscar was found thanks to the protective witness tracking bracelet he wore. Oscar was deeply shaken by the event, though not severely injured. The trial next began in April 2013. Jose maintained his innocence throughout the proceedings. However, in May, the trial was delayed when Jose suffered a stroke, pushing the final verdict back to November 2013. The judge determined that the murder was carefully and deliberately planned, bearing the hallmarks of organized crime. The court concluded that Jose and Elsa were involved in planning the attack. They deliberately chose the time and place to put Rosanna in a passive position and unable to defend herself. Specifically, they targeting her after a phone call would lure her outside. The court ultimately determined that José's primary motive for the murder was financial, because he did not want to divide the joint property with Rosanna. As a result, José and Elsa were sentenced to life imprisonment. The higher court upheld the conviction, emphasizing José's threatening behavior, the domestic violence Rosanna suffered, and the significant influence his mother had over him. Years later, in 2015, José and Elsa were granted house arrest due to health and age concerns, respectively. This allowed them to be reunited with their children. Throughout this time, the media continued to follow the story of the children. In January 2017, the court allowed the children to spend a weekend with their maternal grandparents for the first time. The Rosanna Galliano family thoroughly prepared their home, repainting and cleaning the house, and decorating it with balloons and a welcome sign. Graciela also cooked the children's favorite meal in anticipation of their arrival. The Rosanna Galliano home was filled with joy that weekend, as the boys spent happy time together, playing soccer and video games, and even asked to sleep in their grandmother's bed, whom they hadn't seen in over 2 years. However, their happiness was short-lived. On November 24, 2018, José passed away after suffering another stroke. This was a devastating blow for the children. Aunt Monica reassured them with love and calmness, promising to support whatever decision they made. The boys decided to live with Aunt Monica. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Channin Starbuck. Channin was born on April 19, 1969, in Anderson, Indiana. She was the youngest child in her family and grew up with 2 older brothers. However, her life changed dramatically when her parents divorced and remarried, giving her more siblings. From a young age, Channin dreamed of having a large and loving family of her own. She often participated in church activities and had a deep faith, which reinforced her dream. Channin grew up in a simple and friendly environment. She had a passion for painting and won many awards. When she was 20, she met Clay Starbuck, a 25-year-old man. They met at a party in Florida, where Channin had moved with her family when she was a child. Clay Starbuck, originally from Alaska, came to Florida during his vacation. During their first meeting, Channin learned a lot about Clay, including that he had attended a diesel mechanic school in Colorado after high school. He then returned home to work on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline and was financially stable. However, Channin also learned that Clay was married and had 2 children from that marriage. Despite this, she was not discouraged by his complicated past. Instead, she saw it as a positive thing, believing that it gave him valuable experience for his married life. After getting married, Channin and Clay moved in together. In the new place, Channin had to overcome many difficulties related to the environment and weather, but she eventually adapted and settled down. However, married life was not as perfect as Channin had planned. Channin and Clay were often apart because of Clay's work, but their love helped her overcome her loneliness and wait for the day they could reunite. During that time, she cared for Clay's children from his previous marriage and had more children. In 1996, the Starbucks family welcomed their son Austin, followed by his brother Blake 3 years later. When their daughter Logan was born, the family was even more excited. However, Logan was soon diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, adding to the challenges of family life. Channin had to deal with Logan's illness and try to support her daughter. She became a more caring and nurturing mother to her children. She spent time on health care, education, and community activities. But while she focused on raising her family, she did not realize that her husband was having an affair at work. As time passed, the Starbuck family continued to grow, and Channin welcomed another daughter, Serena. Despite the hardships of life, she still tried to keep her family happy. But her husband's secret eventually came to light, and it would change her life forever. In 2000, Channon filed for divorce after experiencing a great shock and feeling deeply betrayed. However, she still had feelings for Clay and decided to move to Arizona to start a new life. This attempt failed because she still loved Clay. When Clay contacted her and begged her to come back, Channon believed that he had repented and decided to give him a second chance. In 2001, Channon and Clay welcomed their fifth child, Marshall. However, Marshall's birth created new disagreements. Even an official remarriage in 2006 could not save their broken relationship. After the remarriage, the family moved to Deer Park in Spokane County, Washington. Clay continued to work at his previous job, which led to him being away from home often. Channon had to manage her family and children on her own. However, suspicion continued to poison their marriage, which was affected by the long separations and breakups that occurred during their relationship. Finally, in 2010, Channon and Clay divorced for good. When she turned 40, Channon decided to rebuild her life once again. She still hoped that she could experience the joy of love. She was also determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Even when Clay was seriously injured, she chose not to get back together with him. Instead, she chose to support her ex-husband and provide help when needed. In February 2011, Clay quit his job and decided to settle down permanently in Deer Park. This brought him closer to his children and also closer to Channon. However, he still hoped that Channon would come back to him, but Channon did not share the same views. After finding freedom, Channon enjoyed her new life. Austin and Blake then moved in with their father, and they were happy to be away from their mother's constant supervision. Channon found a part-time job and enrolled in a dental assistant course after her divorce. She had to take care of her family and provide for her children, especially when her ex-husband stopped paying child support due to illness. However, she still had another man to support her in case of emergency. Her children often stayed with this man every Wednesday and on the second and fourth weekends of the month. After completing the course and receiving her certificate, Channon was proud and began to pursue a new dream. She created a profile on a dating website, hoping to meet a man who was worthy and could help her forget her past. She still regretted spending so many years with Clay, a man who did not appreciate her. However, one morning in December 2011, her dream was suddenly ended. On December 2, 2011, the police were notified that Channon was unreachable. Her ex-husband, Clay Starbuck, was the first to report. He reported that he had not been able to contact his ex-wife since December 1 around 3 p.m. Channon had texted her daughter that she could not pick them up from school because she was not feeling well and asked her father to pick them up. However, his phone was turned off, so he did not know about her text. The two children, Marshall and Serena, were tired and hungry. As a result, Logan, 15, decided to call his brother and ask him to drive them to their father's house, which was a few blocks away. When they arrived, Austin said he had not been able to contact his mother either. She may have turned off her phone to rest and recover. Austin took the children to Clay's house. Clay was not expecting them but was very happy to see his children again. After the divorce, the older children lived with him, while the three youngest children lived with their mother. So the father decided to enjoy his time with his children and not bother Channon. On December 2, Clay drove the children to school and went to Channon's house. However, the front door was locked and the blinds were drawn. Since he did not have a spare key, he could not enter the house. Clay then sent a text message saying that if Channon did not show up by 7 p.m., he would contact law enforcement. Time passed without Clay receiving a response from Channon, so he went to the police and reported the situation. Two sheriffs went to the address provided but did not see anything suspicious and returned. The sheriff suggested waiting another day, and if she had not contacted him by then, he should return. Frustrated, Clay went home and waited for news. The next day, Clay went to the police station again. This time, the police told him that he was not the only one reported missing. A friend and Shannon's mother were also unable to contact her. This did not fit her personality. This time, the police took a more serious approach to the case. Many of Shannon's relatives began to worry. After receiving the necessary permission, the police returned to Shannon's house to investigate. When they arrived, the police broke the lock and entered. Initially, they saw no signs of forced entry or robbery. Everything seemed to be in its place. However, when they entered Shannon's bedroom, they discovered an unexpected detail: a broken statue. Then came the horrifying scenes. Shannon, 42, was found lying on her back on the floor of her bedroom in a provocative pose. On her stomach was an erotic massage tool. She had hoped for a better future, but fate did not give her the chance to fulfill her dream. Shannon's body was covered in bruises and scratches. The medical examiner's report showed that some of the injuries on her body were caused by a stun gun. There was also evidence that her body had been moved. Shannon's cause of death was strangulation. It was the detective's job to figure out Shannon's last hours and find the culprit. The police realized that Shannon Starbuck had not only disappeared but had also been brutally murdered. Her room looked as if it had been turned upside down. The bed was unmade, the blankets and sheets were missing, and the mattress cover was stained red. Shannon's cell phone and diary were on the dresser. Forensic experts focused on this room and examined all surfaces for fingerprints. Some surfaces had been wiped clean, but they found 12 latent fingerprints on the massager and the bathroom mirror. They also found many other traces in common areas for DNA analysis. Experts took samples from under Shannon's fingernails on her face and neck. Detectives suspect that Shannon was killed after she left the bathroom, then placed on the bed, and finally dragged to the floor. It is worth noting that the removed bed sheets were found in the washing machine, possibly intended to destroy evidence. The detectives needed to gather information about Shannon and her lifestyle. So, after the ex-husband calmed down, they questioned him. Clay explained that he and his ex-wife had an arrangement regarding child pickup and drop-off. Every morning, he picked up the younger kids and took them to school, and she picked them up after school. Clay said that on the morning of December 1st, his car broke down a few blocks from home. So he texted Shannon, asking her to take the kids to school. He then went home to wait for the car to warm up, thinking that would help it start. Around 11 a.m., he tried to restart the car but was unsuccessful. He gave up and went back inside to take a nap. During that time, his cell phone battery died. To back up his claim, he showed his correspondence with his ex-wife. At first, everything made sense. Furthermore, Clay was very cooperative, handing over his cell phone, DNA sample, and fingerprints. He also confessed that he was worried about Shannon because the divorce had made her more vulnerable. In addition, he shared that because she was single, Shannon had registered on a dating website and had many admirers. According to Clay, it is possible that Shannon had several lovers at the same time. He believes that one of them may have caused her death. However, he could not name them specifically due to a lack of information. During the conversation, Clay sobbed. He explained that accepting the death of his ex-lover was very difficult. After taking his statement, the police let Clay go home. He was faced with informing his children about Shannon's death. The case involving Shannon Starbuck's death has attracted public attention. Investigators interviewed the Starbucks neighbors, focusing on details, especially reports of strange people and vehicles appearing outside her home in recent weeks. An autopsy was performed, and the report found that Starbucks suffered chest injuries consistent with the use of a stun gun. She also suffered 10 broken ribs. The injuries to her head and body were severe and likely caused by a blunt object. Because of the appearance of the injuries, it was difficult to determine the exact time of death. Scratch marks on her body indicated that she had been moved after she was killed. The medical examiner's report indicated that a soft object was used to strangle her, possibly a hand, a towel, or a sheet. A key clue in the case came from the body samples collected, including the DNA of a man, suggesting that the suspect may have been a close acquaintance of hers. Channon's family hopes the police will quickly find the culprit. Channon's ex-husband, Clay Starbuck, has cooperated fully with the investigation. He underwent a physical examination to look for any signs of injury on his body, but none were found. As detectives speculated that the culprit may have been injured during the struggle, there was no evidence of that. Channon's two sons, Austin, 21, and Blake, 18, were also examined. Austin had old cuts on his hands, but he explained that these cuts were from his job at a window factory. In conversations with the two brothers, detectives established some important facts. They learned that their mother often dated men after the divorce, which made them unhappy. The brothers also said they had seen intimate photos on their mother's laptop, which led them to suspect that their mother may have been murdered by a lover. However, it was clear that they both loved their mother and were deeply saddened by her passing. Nonetheless, they did not agree with the changes in her life. In a later interview, Clay was more specific. He said Channon caused discord in the family when he was away on business. She often met other men, and he even suspected that Marshall might not be his son. However, he still loved Marshall like his own son. He did not agree with some of Channon's actions, especially the fact that she often brought the children to his house when she went on dates. However, investigators gained a personal view of Channon and her family after speaking with him, her children, and her relatives and friends. After the investigation, detectives had a complete picture of Channon in her life. The kindness and concern of those who attended Channon's funeral on December 10, 2011, showed that she was an intelligent and sincere person. She was buried in a cemetery in Orlando. Investigators quickly searched for the killer after the incident attracted public attention. The suspect at that time was her ex-husband, Clay Starbuck. Police needed to verify his alibi to eliminate him as a suspect. When the first fingerprint results came back, detectives discovered that the fingerprints did not match any at the scene. Therefore, the police needed to gather more information about Clay Starbuck. They also took samples from his cell phone, laptop, and personal diary. At the same time, they also considered the possibility that other people were involved in the murder. After a thorough examination of Starbuck's cell phone, detectives added several names to the suspect list. One of them was someone Channon had connected with through a dating site. They discovered that a man named Tom Walker had scheduled a date with Channon on December 5th, a few hours before her death. They also discovered that Tom and Channon had been chatting openly and exchanging photos. Tom had asked Channon to pose for a photo with an adult toy, but she refused. Interestingly, Channon's body was later found in the exact pose Tom had mentioned. Tom was found within an hour and immediately became a suspect. He explained his activities on the day of Channon's death, which was confirmed by coworkers and surveillance cameras. John Wilson then scheduled a date with Channon on December 1st. It was clear from their correspondence that he was not looking for a serious relationship. However, the truth is that John Wilson used a fake name. His real name is John Kinlawn, who works in a completely different field and is married, so he had to keep it a secret. On the day of the incident, John Kinlawn postponed his morning meeting with Channon until later, citing a headache. In the end, the appointment did not take place. After his DNA sample was taken, he was released. His alibi was confirmed. even though his deception was revealed to his family. The investigation continued, and investigators uncovered some important evidence. When they searched Shannon's phone, they asked the carrier for more information and discovered something significant. At 9:18 a.m. on December 1st, a 911 call was made from Shannon's phone, but someone had deleted it from the call history. Thanks to a request from emergency services, investigators were able to retrieve the call. However, the call contained only crying and other noises before it was abruptly cut off. Investigators also discovered that after the initial call was unsuccessful, emergency services attempted to call back, but the call went to voicemail. GPS data from Shannon's cell phone pinpointed her location at home on the day of her death. Notably, these events occurred after she dropped her children off at school and returned home. Therefore, the messages sent a few hours later could not have been from her. The perpetrator was trying to confuse the investigation. Additionally, this person had a close relationship with the Starbuck family. For example, he used a nickname for their youngest son in his correspondence. Upon closer examination of the information, Clay's statements became even more suspicious. He had a motive to end his ex-wife's life because he could not accept the reality of the divorce. Moreover, he had the perfect opportunity to do this because he knew her daily routine. To clarify the suspicion, the authorities decided to track Clay's car route again, this time using street surveillance camera recordings. The results showed that Clay's car was not broken down as he had claimed. Simultaneously, the results of a second DNA analysis from Shannon's body matched exactly with Clay's sample. On the morning of December 1st, Clay sent a text message to his ex-wife, asking her to take the kids to school and saying that his car had broken down. While she was away, he entered her home and waited. During this time, he accessed her laptop and found personal correspondence that made him jealous and angry. When Shannon returned home, a heated argument ensued that ended in violence. This explains why she was found in an unusual position. This may have been an act of revenge for her newly gained freedom. Clay then stayed at the house and impersonated Shannon in text messages. It seems that he had long intended to harm his ex-wife. The words of a friend of Shannon's took on new meaning for detectives. In one conversation, the friend mentioned that Clay and Shannon's relationship was not normal. Shannon confessed that she was fed up with Clay's constant control and criticism. She was afraid of divorce because she feared that he might one day hurt her. Between June and November 2011, Shannon contacted the police several times, accusing her ex-husband of stalking her. She felt unsafe even in her own home and therefore did not trust anyone with a key. She eventually managed to obtain a restraining order against Clay, so their communication was limited to text messages. A careful examination of Shannon's diary makes it clear that she was not only afraid of her ex-husband but also believed that he was turning the children against her. Clay fabricated lewd stories and portrayed her as promiscuous. The children's reaction to their father's arrest on February 6, 2012, is therefore not surprising. They refused to believe his involvement. The children were unfazed by the fact that a tracking program was found on Shannon's laptop and a hard drive labeled Shannon's desktop was found in Clay's home, along with printed correspondence. The older children doubted the authenticity of the DNA analysis, believing that the accusations against their father were unfounded and that the case was fabricated. However, the views of law enforcement and other relatives were different. The prosecution was convinced of Clay's guilt, relying on a large amount of physical and testimonial evidence. In June 2013, justice prevailed, and Clay Starbuck was convicted of first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances and disrespect for human remains. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 2015, Clay's attorney filed an appeal of the sentence, but it was denied. To this day, Clay remains behind bars at the Airway Heights Correctional Facility in Spokane County. Shannon's loved ones mourn her sudden passing, but their hearts are even more broken by the thought that her children sided with their father. He was so obsessed with his ex-wife that, in his quest for revenge, he forgot the consequences, leaving his children orphaned. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of John Parker. John Parker was born in 1970 in Indiana, United States, to a middle-class family and have a brother. From a young age, John had a strong ambition to succeed. He valued being independent and continually sought ways to better himself, as well as looking for opportunities for growth and advancement. After graduating from high school, John began searching for ways to earn money. According to his brother, John's first job was as a waiter's assistant in a restaurant. However, he quit his job soon after, but the exact reason for his departure is unclear. Undeterred, John quickly found a new job that offered more freedom, allowing him to explore and develop his passion for pursuing a career in sales. John started working as a door-to-door salesman for Kirby vacuum cleaners. Initially, his family teased him, but he soon demonstrated his capabilities to everyone, and he also found his purpose in life. By the end of his first year, John had become one of the company's top salesmen, and he was eager to continue achieving more. John worked extremely long hours, typically between 12 to 16 hours a day. As a result, he became a top sales performer, earning recognition at company meetings. John's success also made him a source of inspiration and guidance for his fellow salespeople. During this time, he met Judy, a 20-year-old woman from a low-income family in Texas. Judy was born in October 1969. She was confident, extremely, and outgoing. Although John wasn't planning to hire any additional salespeople at the time, but she was able to convince John that she had what it took to achieve great success in sales. Judy's past was marked by significant life events. With her parents' consent, she had gotten married at the age of 14 and had 2 children, Christina and Daniel Hicks, but it ultimately ended in divorce. When she met John, she was determined to start a new chapter in her life. John decided to give Judy a chance, taking her under his wing as a mentor in vacuum cleaner sales. Not only did Judy prove herself as a valuable member of the sales team, but she also won John's heart. As time passed, they began to date. John's life was thriving, both personally and professionally. He has built a solid reputation for his sales and training abilities, and most importantly, he has the love and support of his wife Judy. John expanded on his experience by starting his own business in Michigan, specializing in selling and servicing Kirby vacuum cleaners. He also offered training sessions for salespeople, sharing his personal secrets and enthusiasm that had made him successful in the industry. John's company quickly rose to the top in the area, and he credited his success to Judy's support. After establishing his career, John and Judy got married in 1992. The couple had 2 daughters, Tiffany and Erica. As John's business continued to thrive, they relocated to better homes, providing their children with access to excellent schools, luxury cars, and regular vacations. Initially, John had a very good relationship with Judy's stepchildren, Christina and Daniel. Christina was a sweet girl, while Daniel was more energetic and mischievous. The family enjoyed a comfortable life, thanks to John's growing wealth. He openly showcased his success to motivate the young salespeople he trained, demonstrating the potential rewards of hard work and determination. However, as Judy's children entered their teenage years, problems arose. Christina associated with a group of friends who had unhealthy habits, and as a result she started drinking with them. According to some reports, Christina has also used drugs. Meanwhile, Daniel, 13, often appears angry and doesn't seem to fit in with his friends. On one occasion, Daniel took John's car and recklessly drove around the neighborhood with friends, damaging several mailbox posts. The next day, John visited each affected house, compensating the homeowners for the damage to prevent them from filing a police report about the boy's actions. Around this time, John was also summoned to Daniel's school that the boy had misbehaved and they needed to discuss the issue. John and Judy's relationship became strained after he got into a physical altercation with Daniel. After 9 years together, Judy took her family to Texas to visit her childhood home and meet her brother. During the trip, Judy confided in her brother about her troubled marriage and John's mistreatment of her children. However, the situation was more complex. Judy's older children were misbehaving, and she took their side, which added to the tension. Things escalated when John suspected Judy of having an affair with one of his employees. John installed cameras in the office to gather evidence. When he obtained proof of Judy's infidelity, his life was turned upside down, and his demeanor changed drastically. He began to drink heavily, which led to intense arguments with Judy and rough treatment of their children. One incident involved his daughter Tiffany, who was beaten with a belt for not bringing her homework to school. When her teacher noticed the marks the next day, she reported it to social services. Before they arrived, John warned the 4 kids that if they wanted to maintain their luxurious lifestyle, they should say nothing about the beating. Consequently, Tiffany blamed her stepbrother Daniel. John's bad mood not only affected his family but also his employees and clients, who suffered from his outbursts of rage. To keep Judy away from her lover, John moved the family to an exclusive area in Crown Point, Indiana. Despite his hopes for a fresh start, things did not improve. Judy started to improve her appearance by losing weight and changing her look, while John let himself go, growing his beard, smoking, and wearing only jeans. He became increasingly distracted. The business struggled due to John's condition, nearly going bankrupt and forcing him to sell his boat to stay afloat. Office rumors swirled about Judy's alleged affair with Jeff, John's right-hand man, fueling more arguments. At one point, Judy told John she wanted a divorce, but it wouldn't be straightforward. John felt he had given Judy everything, rescuing her from poverty, accepting her children, and showering her with luxuries. When love turns to resentment, he began cutting off Judy's financial sources. John made it clear that if she left, she would leave with nothing, and he had a secret recording of her infidelity with the office employee. This was the situation at the start of 2003. The tension between John and Judy affected the children, whose behavior worsened. Even Tiffany was grounded during the holidays for starting a fire on school grounds with a friend. The arguments finally ended on Thursday, April 17, 2013, when John and Judy went out to dinner. They were likely looking for a way to resolve issues and reduce the tension between them. After dinner, the couple called home to check on their kids and told them they would be back soon. Then, Christina asked them to stop by the office because she had left a school notebook there. As John and Judy left the restaurant, John decided to bring the leftover dinner to Jeff, who was supposedly working late at the office. John and Judy arrived at the office, located in a deserted industrial area. Just before 10 p.m. John went inside to talk to Jeff, while Judy picked up Christina's notebook and returned to the car. A few minutes later, John came out of the office and opened the rear door on the driver's side of the car to look for something. Suddenly, 2 loud bangs were heard, and John collapsed on the ground. Judy and Jeff immediately called 911. Police and medical units arrived at the scene within minutes. Unfortunately, John, 33 years old, had been shot in the back of the head and was pronounced dead at the scene. When questioned by the police, Judy, who was inside the car when the incident happened, was unable to provide much information. Judy said she was sitting in the car when John came out of the office and opened the back door on the driver's side. Immediately, she heard 2 loud shots. Judy's reaction was to hide behind the seat. When she finally lifted her head, she caught a glimpse of a man in dark clothing running away from the car. Initially, it seemed like a robbery because John's wallet was missing. However, as investigators examined the scene more closely, they began to have doubts. John and Judy hadn't told anyone they would be there, which raised several questions. What were the chances of a random robbery in a deserted industrial are very rare. If the motive had been robbery, it's puzzling that the perpetrator would first kill John and then take his wallet. This is especially confusing since John was visibly wearing a valuable gold Rolex and other easily accessible jewelry. Typically, thieves would thoroughly search the victim's pockets in such situations. The fact that this didn't happen raises more questions than answers. 2 bullet casings were found at the scene, which supports Judy's account of hearing 2 shots. One shot killed John instantly, but there's no official information about the second shot. With many unanswered questions, investigators started work taking a statement from Judy. Judy reported that her husband had argued with an employee from his company prior to the incident and identified the individual. However, she couldn't provide any additional information beyond her initial statement at the scene. Jeff, who was inside the office, also couldn't offer any useful insights, as when he heard the gunshots and went outside, it was all over. Meanwhile, authorities informed Christina, a Parker resident, that her stepfather had passed away. With robbery ruled out as a motive, detectives turned their attention to John's circle of relatives and colleagues. They began with an employee who had allegedly argued with John, but the employee claimed they had resolved their issues amicably and had a verified alibi. The investigation expanded, include John's business partners, employees, competitors, friends, and family. Judy's behavior during the funeral surprised and puzzled many people, as she seemed cheerful and socialized with friends, which was unexpected given the circumstances. Her ex-husband was also seen casually reading a newspaper at the funeral. For days after the murder, police brought in 15-year-old Daniel for questioning because he was accused of hiring gang members to kill his stepfather, John. When questioned, Daniel admitted to paying someone to hurt John, but claimed he only wanted him injured, not killed. The police arrested one of the young men that Daniel had hired, but they were released after their alibi checked out. Daniel was also released after 9 days due to lack of evidence and his status as a minor. Later, it was discovered that John had problems with Judy's children, which led to further investigation into Daniel and raised suspicions about Judy's 17-year-old daughter, Christina. When questioned, Christina denied any involvement, and this lead also went nowhere. However, investigators were left wondering who was providing the money for these schemes, and they suspected Judy was the source. Further investigation showed that Judy and John's relationship had gotten much worse before he died, and Judy's affair was discovered. However, sources revealed that John had no plans to leave his wife and was trying to save their relationship. Judy's main reason for targeting her husband seemed to be financial gain, as detectives found that John had 2 life insurance policies worth $1 million. After John's death, Judy tried to claim this money, but the insurance company initially refused to pay due to the ongoing investigation. Receiving the insurance money becomes even more complicated when John's father suspects Judy of being involved in his son's death. Despite these leads, the case stalled due to lack of concrete evidence. Over time, the John family household underwent substantial transformations. Judy was rarely at home, as she was busy with her new partner, Jeff, who was John's trusted manager. In Judy's absence, Christina and Daniel took care of Tiffany and Erica. Later, Judy and Jeff moved out of state with Tiffany and Erica, while Daniel went to live with his biological father. Christina, who was pregnant and had a boyfriend, stayed in the house. Although the investigation had stalled, authorities kept the case open, regularly reviewing the files in hopes of finding new leads. Their persistence paid off when they came to question some of Christina and Daniel's classmates. These schoolmates admitted to selling a firearm to Christina and Daniel. This information prompted detectives to investigate a piece of land owned by the family that Christina used for target practice. Upon inspection, several bullet casings were found. Laboratory analysis revealed a crucial clue: the bullet casings matched those from the crime scene where John was killed. In 2007, a colleague who was a narcotics officer provided additional information. The narcotics officer had been tracking Christina's ex-boyfriend, who was involved in a drug case and was arrested, to request a lighter sentence. Christina's former boyfriend revealed a conversation he had with Judy. In this conversation, Judy mentioned that her son Daniel was the one who fired the fatal shot that killed John. When confronted with this new information, 21 years old, Christina, who was linked to the weapon used in the crime, began to cooperate. She admitted to buying the weapon and calling John and Judy on the night of the incident. She had asked them to stop by the office, claiming she needed to pick up forgotten homework. Christina confessed to being part of a plan to kill John, with her brother Daniel designated as the shooter. When Daniel was 19, he was found and arrested in Arizona. Daniel was shown new evidence about the shooting and Christina's statement. He admitted to shooting John, but said his mother, Judy, was the one who planned the whole thing. Daniel said Judy had forged checks from her company to get the $7,500 to hire someone to kill John. However, when the people she hired took the money without doing the job, Judy told them to buy a gun for Daniel to use instead. Daniel also said it was Judy's idea to make up a reason for leaving the house that night by calling about homework. He said he shot John once in the head, and the second shot was an accident that happened while he was looking through John's pockets for his wallet, as his mother had told him to do. Daniel was also told to come back home without telling his younger sisters what had happened. His sister Christina helped by keeping the girls busy watching TV. Daniel said Judy convinced them to commit the crime by telling them they were being abused by John. And Judy promises them a better life with more money and freedom. It was also discovered that Judy had previously attempted to kill her husband. She had tried to poison his food, which resulted in John being briefly hospitalized with what was thought to be food poisoning. By the end of 2007, Christina and Daniel were formally charged with murder and conspiracy. Christina pleaded not guilty to conspiracy and was released on bail. In March 2008, Daniel, then 20 years old, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to kill his stepfather, John. As part of a deal, Daniel agreed to admit his guilt and testify against his mother. The prosecution agreed not to charge him with murder, but he still faced a prison sentence of 20 to 25 years. Daniel claimed that when he was 14, about a year before the incident, his mother and sister asked him to help kill John. His mother gave him and his sister money to buy a pistol, black clothing, gloves, and a mask to wear on the day of the crime. She also instructed him on what to do, including showering after the crime to remove gunpowder residue. Judy took responsibility for disposing of the evidence, including the gun, clothes, and her husband's wallet. In July 2009, 6 years after John's death, Judy turned herself in and pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder. She admitted to planning, executing, and covering up the crime. The prosecution asked for a sentence of 28 to 35 years in prison. Judy, almost 40, was sentenced to 33 years in late August 2009. Daniel was sentenced to 23 years in September, and Christina received a 5-year sentence in October. Press reports state that Daniel was released from custody in 2017. He then chose to keep a low profile. Christina served 4 years of her sentence and was released in 2013, but she tragically died from a drug overdose. This case was driven by greed. Although Judy was successful, her greater desires led her to terrible crimes. Judy's actions not only destroyed a successful business owner but also had a profound impact on her 4 children. 2 of them ended up in prison, and the younger ones were left without their parents once again. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Petit family. The Petit family was viewed as a model family due to their stable economic background and well-behaved children, earning them genuine admiration from those around them. William Petit, the father, was a standout athlete in high school, particularly in basketball, where he demonstrated natural leadership skills. He was also the top student in his class, going on to earn a law degree from Dartmouth University. However, William's true passion lay in helping others, caring for the sick, and making a positive impact on the social. After completing his law degree, he decided to pursue a career in medicine at the University of Pittsburgh. It was during his third year of residency at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh that William met Jennifer Hawk, a nurse specializing in oncology and co-director of the Health Center for a pre-graduate internship program. They fell deeply in love, with those who knew them confirming that they were perfectly suited for each other. The couple got married in 1985. 4 years later, they had their first daughter, Haley. Her birth inspired them to have a large family, which prompted them to purchase a house in Cheshire, Connecticut. On November 17, 1995, their second daughter, Michaela, was born. Following childbirth, Jennifer resumed her work as a nurse and internship co-director. However, she was later diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a chronic disease with no cure that would follow her for the rest of her life. Her family remained supportive throughout. At 10 years old, Haley started raising money for the Multiple Sclerosis Society, generating significant funds over time. Michaela also performed well academically. And when Haley went to college, Michaela planned to take over the fundraising efforts so she could continue supporting their community. The summer before, Michaela had learned to cook and she enjoyed preparing meals for her family. Tragically, this daily activity leads the family to an encounter with a criminal. One July evening in 2007, Michaela was preparing dinner, but she needed additional ingredients. She and her mother went to the nearest market, where they coincidentally encountered Joshua Komisarjevsky, a man recently released from prison. Joshua had experienced a traumatic and complicated childhood. He was born to teenage parents. He was put up for adoption a week after birth and adopted by the Komisarjevsky family, renowned artists in Europe known for their strict and religious upbringing. Joshua had a high IQ, but struggled in school, prompting his parents to decide that homeschooling was a better option. During his trial, Joshua revealed that he had been sexually abused by a cousin in his childhood, but his family chose not to address the issue. This traumatic experience contributed to the development of his rebellious personality. At the age of 14, Joshua was accused of abusing his sister. Around the same time, he committed his first burglary. In 2002, he was arrested for 18 charges of burglary and resulting in a 9-year prison sentence. During the trial, he gave a chilling confession, revealing that he enjoyed invading other people's private space, enjoyed the feeling of being close to them while they slept, and found particular satisfaction in making others feel insecure. Released on parole in 2007 at the age of 27, officials deemed Joshua a danger to society, describing him as a perverted individual and disturbing behavior. Despite these warnings, the jury declared him fit for release. Following his release, Joshua stayed in a residence for ex-convicts, where he met his accomplice, Stephen Hayes. Hayes had spent a significant portion of his life in prison, starting with his first incarceration at the age of 16 in 1980. He was frequently arrested for violent robbery and burglary, and after being sentenced in 2004, he was granted parole in 2006, which led him to the same halfway house where he met Joshua. On July 22, 2007, Joshua trailed Michaela Petit and her mother as they traveled to a nearby market to purchase. He paid close attention to and noted specific details about Michaela's vehicle, facial features, and blonde hair. After completing their shopping, Michaela and her mother returned home, having no knowledge that Joshua had been following them. Later, Hayes sent Joshua a text message indicating he was impatient to start and needed a drink soon. Hayes asked if their plan was still on, to which Joshua confirmed to be yes. When Hayes asked how much longer he had to wait, Joshua told him he was busy putting his child to bed and advised Hayes to be patient. Hayes responded by expressing his eagerness to proceed. Meanwhile, Joshua secretly follows the Petit family in his car to find out the exact location of their house. The whole family was enjoying a nice dinner together, but they unaware that it would be the last time they would all be together. Later that night, while everyone was asleep except for William Petit, who had dozed off in the living room, their peace was disrupted by strange noises inside the house. William remembered feeling groggy, in pain, and unable to think clearly. Joshua and Hayes had entered the house through an unlocked door, initially planning to rob the family. However, upon finding a baseball bat, they used it to brutally beat William, who remained conscious despite the assault. One of the intruders threatened to shoot him if he moved. William was then restrained with ropes, tied to a pole in the basement. Joshua and Haley proceeded upstairs to Haley's room, where they found her sleeping. They tied Haley and Michaela to their bedposts, covering their heads with pillowcases. Meanwhile, in the master bedroom, Jennifer Petit had fallen asleep, but was soon woken up by Joshua and Hayes. They controlled Jennifer by tying her hands and feet, feeling that they now had control of the house. Joshua and Hayes then took their time to thoroughly inspect the house, and even stopped to smoke cigarettes in the living room. After collecting valuables such as jewelry, cash, Joshua and Hayes decided it was time to leave. It seemed the Petit family's ordeal was finally over as they heard the burglars leave the house. However, their nightmare was far from over. Joshua and Hayes sold the items at a pawn shop, but after realizing they hadn't made as much money as they expected, their greed drove them to return to the house. When they returned to the Petit house, they discovered a check register with $40,000 and decided to steal a total of $155,000. Once back, they informed Jennifer of their plan, threatening to kill her entire family if she didn't comply. Desperate and prioritizing her daughter's safety, Jennifer reluctantly agreed to accompany Hayes to the bank the next morning. Meanwhile, Joshua took advantage of Jennifer's absence to enter Michaela's room. He untied Michaela, undressed her, and took photos with his cell phone. He assaulted her, recording the act. Afterward, Joshua took her to the bathroom to clean her, aiming to eliminate any DNA evidence. He ordered her to put her pajamas back on and tied her up again. The evidence that Joshua raped Michaela was found during her autopsy. State Medical Examiner Dr. Wayne Carver discovered Joshua's DNA in Michaela's body. At the bank, everything initially seemed to go smoothly. However, Hayes failed to notice Jennifer's actions while she was in line. Before approaching the teller, Jennifer wrote a note on a flyer asking for help. The note read that her name was Jennifer Petit, she needed to withdraw $115,000 from her savings account, and that her family was in danger, so Jennifer asked them to call the police, or her family would be killed. The teller gave Jennifer the money despite her lack of identification. With the cash, Jennifer left the bank and returned to the car with Hayes. The bank employee immediately called the police to report the incident. However, the manager told the 911 dispatcher that Jennifer had indicated the home invaders were being nice and only wanted money. Cheshire police received a report from the bank and they set up a vehicle perimeter around the area without alerting the suspect. From a distance, the police observed the situation without intervening. Meanwhile, back at the house, Joshua told his accomplice about his actions towards Michaela, implying that he could easily harm Jennifer as well. Hayes then grabbed Jennifer, pinned her to the ground, and started removing her clothes. William heard his wife being assaulted upstairs and managed to flee. One of the intruders responded, "Don't worry, It's all going to be over in a couple of minutes. William crawled to the basement stairs and eventually made it to the backyard. William thought the intruders would shoot them all soon, so he knew he had to act fast. Joshua checked on William but found he had escaped. According to Hayes' confession, Joshua told Hayes that William had gotten away while Hayes was raping Jennifer in the living room. Upon hearing this, Hayes strangled Jennifer to death while continuing to assault her. Shortly after, they heard William shouting for help. A neighbor, who initially didn't recognize William due to his injuries, immediately called 911. Realizing the police would arrive soon, Joshua and Hayes tried to eliminate evidence. Hayes and Joshua doused Jennifer's lifeless body, various parts of the house including Michaela and Haley's bedroom, and also Michaela and Haley themselves with gasoline. Hayes and Joshua started a fire at the scene, unaware that the police had blocked off the area just a few miles away. Within 5 minutes, they collided with a police vehicle and were surrounded by officers. The two perpetrators, Joshua and Hayes, who were later identified as ex-convicts, were pulled from their vehicle and arrested. Meanwhile, the fire at the house was spreading rapidly. An ambulance arrived and took William Petit, who was seriously injured, to the nearest hospital. Firefighters soon followed and attempted to put out the blaze. Once the fire was extinguished, they discovered a horrific scene inside the house. The first body they found was Jennifer's, which was badly charred and had rope around her ankles. On the second floor, they found Michaela tied to her bed, her body completely consumed by the fire. In a desperate bid to escape, Haley had managed to break free restraints but collapsed just a few meters away due to smoke inhalation. William had also managed to free himself and crawled to a neighbor's yard for help, but the neighbor didn't initially recognize him due to the severity of his injuries. Both Joshua and Hayes admitted to the murders during questioning. Detectives noticed that Hayes smelled of gasoline throughout her interrogation. However, each attacker claimed the other was the main person responsible for planning the home invasion. Joshua also accused William of being responsible for the murders. In his diary, Joshua referred to William as a coward, stating that William had the opportunity to save his family but chose not to. The trial of Hayes started on September 13, 2010, with a jury of 12 people, consisting of 7 women and 5 men. The defense team argued that Joshua was the mastermind behind the crime and was responsible for making it more brutal. On the other hand, the prosecutors believed that both Hayes and Joshua were equally responsible. After about 5 hours of discussion, the jury found Hayes guilty on October 5. The sentencing phase began on October 18, but the jury was initially torn between recommending life imprisonment or the death penalty. Hayes' defense team argued that life imprisonment without parole would be a harsher punishment. However, on November 8, the jury decided to recommend the death sentence for Hayes. Before the trial, Hayes had tried to negotiate a plea bargain for a life sentence, but the prosecutors wanted the death penalty. On December 2, 2010, Hayes apologized for the pain he caused the Petit family. He stated that death would be a welcome relief and hoped it would bring some peace to those he hurt. Judge John Blue sentenced Hayes to 6 death sentences and 106 additional years for other crimes. However, when Connecticut abolished capital punishment in 2015, Hayes' death sentence was changed to life imprisonment. The trial of Joshua Komisarjevsky began on September 19, 2011. His lawyers offered a guilty plea in exchange for a life sentence, but prosecutors sought the death penalty. They argued that Hayes was the one who directed Joshua. Joshua was found guilty on October 13, 2011, and the jury recommended the death penalty on December 9, 2011. During Joshua's sentencing, he expressed remorse and shame for the crime, claiming he never intended to kill anyone. The judge set an execution date of July 20, 2012, holding Joshua accountable for his actions. However, In August 2015, his death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment after Connecticut abolished capital punishment. William Petit, the lone survivor of his family, was released from the hospital after 4 days. Upon his discharge, he immediately attended the funeral service for his wife and daughters. Overwhelmed with guilt and grief, William struggled to come to terms with the devastating reality that his loved ones were truly gone forever. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Timothy Jones Jr. As a child, Timothy witnessed hardships in his family. His mother suffered from schizophrenia, and her mental health gradually declined. Eventually, she had to leave home to receive constant care. When Timothy was 20, his father moved with him to his grandmother's house. There, Timothy faced domestic violence, substance abuse, and alcohol abuse. Despite his difficult upbringing, Timothy showed an aptitude for mathematics and computer engineering. He could solve problems easily and take apart and reassemble computers to make them run faster. However, things changed when Timothy reached his teens. At age 10, he began hearing voices in his head. By middle school, he was using drugs and drinking excessively. At age 15, he suffered a traumatic brain injury in a car accident that affected the frontal lobe of his brain, the area that controls impulses and is associated with mental illness. After the accident, Timothy exhibited unusual behavior and was very irritable. He felt jealous of his father and believed that anyone who had a relationship with him was causing his father to neglect him. Over time, Timothy believed that his father did not love him and feared being abandoned. Although his intelligence developed, his emotional development was affected, causing him to have a childlike mentality and lack of empathy. After graduating from high school, Timothy Jones Jr. dreamed of joining the United States Navy. His intelligence helped him to study there, but he lacked athletic ability and discipline. He lasted only a few weeks of training and often cried out of frustration. He had difficulty keeping up with the rigorous requirements, which led to depression and a drug test that revealed substance abuse, resulting in his expulsion. In 2000, Timothy began associating with people involved in bad activities. Police found him in possession of illegal narcotics and writing checks in his father's name. The police forced Timothy's father to control his son or face arrest himself. In 2001, Timothy Jones Jr. was sent to a work camp in an Illinois state prison for a year. When he was released, he seemed to have changed, with religion becoming the main driving force in his life. Timothy met Amber while they were both working at an amusement park in Chicago. After a while, in 2004, he invited her to his church. Within weeks, they decided to marry, in keeping with the church's expectation of immediate marriage. Amber was 19 and Timothy was 22. However, Amber soon learned about the strictness of the church. Women were not allowed to cut their hair, wear pants, wear makeup, or wear jewelry. Additionally, Timothy believed that women should submit to their husbands and bear children. Timothy was very religious and devoted to the church. Although many advised him not to take the Bible literally, he persisted. They soon had 3 children, Mara, Elias, and Nathan, each born a year apart. As their family grew, they moved to Mississippi. There, Timothy graduated with highest honors from State University, earning a degree in computer science and engineering. Timothy Jones Jr. was building a family while working multiple jobs, and his family was extremely proud of him. With a promising future, Tim was truly a talented man, and everything seemed to be going well for him. He had secured a job at Intel as a computer chip manufacturer, which his wife, Amber, saw as an opportunity for a better life. After living in student housing in Mississippi, they dreamed of a larger home to raise their 3 children and even considered hiring a nanny. However, things did not go as planned. Timothy bought an old mobile home on a dirt road in Red Bank because he dreamed of living on a farm. He purchased animals to raise, and Amber stayed home to care for them. By 2012, they had 2 more children, and problems began to arise. Timothy wanted Amber to homeschool the children, even though she only had a high school education. Amber felt lonely and isolated, with no family nearby and Timothy's family far away. She felt inferior to her intelligent and educated husband. The tension in Timothy and Amber's marriage increased when Timothy accused Amber of having an affair with a neighbor. Their marriage began to fall apart, and they started to consider divorce. Timothy did not want Amber involved in the children's lives, so he sought the help of a therapist and asked his divorce attorney to declare that he was capable of raising the children alone. Amber, without a lawyer and unsure of what to do, decided that it was best for the children to stay with their father. She felt she had nothing to provide for the children, as she had no job or education. Ultimately, the court decided that Timothy would have primary custody as the sole financial provider, and Amber would be granted regular visitation rights. After leaving her husband and children, Amber faced many difficulties. Meanwhile, Timothy began to lose control and suffer from his failed marriage. He started using drugs and alcohol again and struggled with the voices in his head. He became easily angered over small things. Amber recounted that Timothy once beat her in front of the children until she passed out. Unable to manage work and family, Timothy hired a nanny service to care for the children. The first 2 nannies found Timothy's house very clean and noted that he was dedicated and attentive to the children, but their attitudes changed when they learned about Timothy's condition. On the 3rd occasion, Timothy hired Crystal, a 17-year-old nanny who had a young daughter. Timothy gradually developed feelings for Crystal, and she soon became his lover. Timothy began to pressure Crystal to follow his religious customs, including wearing long dresses, growing her hair long, and being submissive to him. However, when Crystal refused, their relationship deteriorated. Crystal later spoke of how Timothy was too harsh with his children. He forced them to stand on their toes for hours, believing it was good for their weak bodies. Crystal eventually left after witnessing Timothy trying to hit her young daughter. After Crystal left, Timothy hired another nanny. The new nanny noticed a major change in Timothy's home. Once clean, the house was now littered with trash and dirty clothes, and there were even cockroaches. Over time, Timothy became increasingly violent and punished his children daily. He imposed a restricted diet, feeding them only oatmeal throughout the day and limiting them to 1 meal. In August 2014, the nanny contacted South Carolina Social Services to report conditions at Timothy's home. She described the lack of food and physical abuse the children were subjected to. In fact, the violence was so severe that teachers had reported it to the agency months earlier. The agency had previously required Timothy to sign a non-abuse pledge, but the children came to school with bruises and provided evidence linking them to the violence. On the afternoon of August 28, 2014, Timothy picked up the children. At the time, he was very angry about an electrical problem in the house. Timothy took his anger out on his 6-year-old son, Nathan, and repeatedly made Nathan bend down to pick up sand as punishment. Every time Nathan slowed down, Timothy hit him with a belt. While Nathan was being punished, Amber, Timothy's ex-wife, called to talk to the children. She made several calls until Timothy answered at 7:10. During the conversation, Nathan told his mother about the punishment for breaking the outlet, claiming it was an accident. Timothy angrily hung up, telling Amber to stop defending him. After hours of torture, Nathan was exhausted, dehydrated, and begged for it to stop. He passed out, ending it all. Timothy took Nathan to bed and left him without giving him water or help. Call records show that Amber called 8 more times after that. Around 1 a.m., Timothy took his 8-year-old daughter, Mara, to a convenience store to buy 10 packs of cigarettes. When he got home, he strangled Mara. Timothy then went to his 7-year-old son, Elias, and did the same thing. He then unbuckled his belt and strangled Gabriel, 2, and Elaine, 1, until they stopped breathing. When the children did not move, he took a blanket, wrapped each one in it, and placed them in the back seat of the car and drove away. The disappearance of Timothy and his children was reported to the police. The police searched everywhere for Timothy. Fortunately, a police officer stopped his car. As the police approached the car, they immediately detected a foul odor inside. They also noticed that the carpet appeared to have been recently cleaned with bleach. The sheriff asked the driver, Timothy, for identification and license plate number and observed that Timothy appeared to be under the influence of drugs. After checking Timothy's information, the police discovered that he was wanted in South Carolina for a child welfare issue. When asked about the whereabouts of his children, Timothy initially said he had no children, but later mentioned that he had 3 children living in South Carolina. The officers asked for Timothy's relatives' phone numbers to verify the children's safety. After making the call, they immediately arrested Timothy. As Timothy was placed in a patrol car, he became emotional and began telling officers what he had done to his children. He confessed to killing his 3 children for ulterior motives. Timothy explained that he felt very sad and angry when he saw one of his sons playing with an electrical outlet, so he strangled his son until he lost consciousness. Timothy did the same to his other son and his older daughter. He strangled his daughter until she turned blue. In another account, Timothy claimed that his son was trying to hurt him when he saw him playing with an electrical outlet, which prompted him to kill him. In one recording, investigators heard a discussion about Timothy Jones Jr. subjecting his 6-year-old son, Nathan, to hours of punishment. This was because Nathan had accidentally turned off an electrical outlet in the living room. Timothy said he put Nathan to bed afterwards, but when he checked on him, he found him dead. When asked why he did this, Timothy said he heard voices in his head and believed his children were plotting against him. He also thought his children would be happier if they went to heaven. So he decided to kill all of them. After killing his children, Timothy traveled throughout the southeast with the bodies of his 5 children covered in blankets in his car. He eventually dumped them in a remote wooded area in Alabama. In a second statement, Timothy said Nathan's punishment had gotten out of hand. When he went to Nathan's room, he found him dead. Not knowing what to do, Timothy decided to end the lives of all his children. After an autopsy, pathologists were unable to determine a definitive cause of death. However, they theorized that Nathan may have been too weak from the excessive punishment Timothy had imposed on him, making it easier to kill Nathan. Investigators questioned Timothy's actions, particularly why he did not call 911 immediately after the incident. Instead, he attempted to conceal and dispose of his children. Timothy later led investigators to where he had dumped the children's bodies that same day. The remains of the 5 children were found on September 10th. On September 11th, evidence from Timothy's car was collected and turned over to South Carolina authorities. Some of the evidence included family photos, children's clothing, children's drawings, letters from his mother to the children, Timothy's college diploma, and his passport. Notably, Timothy Jones Jr.'s handwritten notes included a list of actions related to the disposal of the bodies, such as moving the bodies, grinding the bones into powder or small pieces, burning the bodies, and preparing necessary items such as camping equipment, gas, and muriatic acid. On September 13, 2014, Jones was admitted to a correctional institution and placed in a special cell separate from the general population. Since then, he has been evaluated by mental health experts, including psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, and forensic specialists. Opinions among these professionals varied. Some diagnosed him with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, or a personality disorder. They suggested his mental state during the crime might have been worsened by drug use and a traumatic brain injury he sustained at age 15, which could have contributed to underlying psychosis. These theories were presented to the jury during his trial. Conversely, other specialists argued that Timothy was mentally competent and that his attempts to hide evidence, including his children, showed he knew his actions were morally and legally wrong. His internet search history indicated he understood what he was doing and how to do it. The prosecution argued that Timothy succumbed to the pressures of a failing marriage and the challenges of raising 5 young children. According to his statements, the catalyst for his actions was his wife's alleged infidelity with their neighbor, who is now her husband. She testified that she did not commit adultery and that her relationship with the neighbor began only after her divorce. The trial occurred in late May 2019, featuring weeks of intense testimonies and evidence against Timothy. The crime is considered one of the most horrific murders in South Carolina's history. Mara's last words to her father were, "Daddy, I love you." When police searched the house, they found Naten's favorite Toy Story toy broken into pieces. Naten appeared to have been the most severely punished. Nevertheless, all testimonies agreed on one thing: the children loved their father. On June 13, 2019, after 2 hours of deliberation, Timothy Jones Jr. was sentenced to death. He is currently in solitary confinement at a correctional institution, wearing a green jumpsuit that identifies him as a death row inmate. This tragic case ended the lives of innocent children because of marital issues, with both the father and mother making irreversible mistakes. Again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Isla Reynolds. Isla Reynolds was born on April 4, 2010 in Waterville, Maine, USA. She is a beautiful girl with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a cute smile. Her parents, Trista Reynolds and Justin DiPietro, had a brief relationship in the summer of 2009, which resulted in Trista becoming pregnant. However, Justin suspected that he was not the father of the child. When Trista gave birth to Isla, Justin took a paternity test in July 2010, which confirmed that Isla was his daughter. As a result, he was ordered by Child Protective Services to pay child support in December of that year. Trista and Justin agreed that Isla would be raised by Trista. Trista and her daughter live in Portland. It wasn't until mid-2011, after Isla's first birthday, that Justin began visiting her. He lived an hour and a half away, and Justin would visit Isla during the day. Trista and Justin agreed that Justin could take Isla out, but not stay overnight. After a while, Trista got a new boyfriend, Raymond. Trista became pregnant, and in 2011, the family welcomed a new member. Trista would raise both children. Everything changed on October 13, 2011, when Trista met with Child Protective Services. The details of the complaint that led to the meeting remain unclear, but it is known that Trista had a substance abuse problem. That day, officials gave Trista a choice. Trista would go to rehab, or she would lose custody of the children. Trista immediately entered a 10-day rehab program and left her daughter with her mother and sister. Trista was determined not to lose custody. By October 2011, Justin had seen Isla about 5 to 10 times. However, just 4 days after Trista began rehab, on October 17, Justin and his family decided they wanted to take custody of Isla. Justin's mother, Phoebe DiPietro, contacted Child Protective Services and was approved to adopt Isla. Child Protective Services quickly notified Trista's relatives of their decision. After being granted permission, Justin and his family picked up Isla but did not know her exact address. Child Protective officials provided the location through police officer Charles Weaver, who accompanied Justin and Justin's mother Phoebe to the home of Isla's aunt, Jessica. Justin's mother Phoebe waited in the car while Justin and the police entered the house to pick up Isla. A tense situation occurred. Isla's mother Jessica begged the police not to take Isla away and warned that she would not hand over the child to anyone. The police observed that Isla was very happy, constantly laughing and playing. However, when Justin appeared, Isla began to cry and tried to move away from him. Despite this, the police officer still handed the child over to Justin. When Isla was handed over to Justin, she struggled and screamed. She even tried to bite the officer. Child Protective Services Supervisor Charles was told by the officer that Isla hated her father and that they could not give the child to Justin. But Charles said that it was not his decision. He was just there to carry out Child Services orders. For Justin to have formal custody of Isla, he would have to get the consent of Isla's mother, Trista, or go through a court process to have the child approved by a judge. In this case, there was no agreement or court process. Instead, the Child Protective Services supervisor's decision to place the child was valid. Child Protective Services Supervisor Charles gave custody of Isla to Justin. He then took Isla to the house in Waterville where he lived with his 47-year-old mother, Phoebe, his 24-year-old sister, Alicia, and Elisha's daughter, Gabriella. Justin, 25, lived in a large room in the partially finished basement, while the rest of the family lived upstairs. During this time, Trista called Justin every day to talk to Isla. On October 20, 2011, while Trista was in treatment, a meeting was held to discuss Isla's case. Attendees included Child Protective Services, 2 doctors, Trista and her sister Jessica, and their attorneys. Justin also attended the meeting by phone. The meeting resulted in an agreement that Isla would be returned to her mother on October 22, 2011, immediately after Trista completed her drug treatment program. In addition, Justin agreed to take Isla to the treatment center on the 21st to visit her mother. Initially, things went well for Trista. However, the decision was reversed. In her desperation to get her daughter back, Trista called Child Protective Services several times to ask them to help enforce the agreement. Unable to reach them, Trista attempted to negotiate with Justin to reach a temporary agreement. Under the agreement, Justin would continue to care for Isla and Trista would be allowed regular visits. On November 12, 2011, Justin took Isla to the emergency room. After a doctor examined her, they determined that Isla had a fractured elbow. According to Justin, the accident occurred the night before, November 11th. It was raining at the time and Justin believed that he had slipped and fallen on her while holding her on the porch. Initially, Justin thought that she was not seriously injured because although she was crying, she seemed fine. However, it was not until the next morning that Justin noticed that Isla had injured her hand, so he took her to the hospital. By the following Monday, the orthopedist concluded that surgery was not necessary and that Isla's injury would heal on its own. A week later, on November 26, during Isla's third visit, the specialist said that Isla's condition was improving and that she was slowly recovering. Trista was at the hospital to monitor her daughter's health. Never thought that this would be the last time Trista would hold her daughter in her arms. From that moment on, things went from bad to worse. Tired of fighting over custody, visitation rights, and even the right to talk to her on the phone, Trista filed a lawsuit to gain custody of her daughter. On December 15, 2011, Trista filed a lawsuit for custody of Isla. Custody of Isla was awarded to her just 2 days later on Saturday, December 17. Justin called the police in the morning to report Isla missing from his mother's house, where he was staying with his girlfriend Courtney Roberts and sister Alicia. Justin assured them that the police had put Isla to bed the night before and that when they woke up, Isla had disappeared early that morning. Trista travels to a coastal town in Maine to visit her boyfriend Raymond. She falls asleep on the couch while Raymond's father, Robert, drives. When Robert received a call from Trista's father informing him that Isla was missing, Robert was shocked and found a suitable place to stop the car and wake Trista. Trista was still sleepy, but when she heard her father's voice herself, she began to understand that she had no idea where her daughter was. In desperation, Trista changed direction to look for Isla. The trip to the police station lasted an hour, but for Trista, it felt like a century. She called Justin several times to find out what had happened, but there was no response. When they got to the police station, both Trista and her father-in-law Robert gave statements. After about 30 minutes, Trista's father arrived at the police station with them, angry and upset. Justin called 911 on Saturday morning at 8:49 to report Isla missing. He said he last saw Isla the night before at 10 p.m., when his sister Alicia checked on Isla before going to bed. However, when they woke up the next morning, they discovered that Isla had disappeared from her crib. Justin suspected that an unknown intruder had taken Isla. News of Isla's disappearance quickly spread to the police. The sheriff told the media that the case was being actively investigated and their goal was to find Isla at all costs. Police continued to search the house for more clues. On Sunday, December 18th, police dogs were deployed and searched the area around the house where Isla was. Trista's house also underwent a thorough search. On Monday, December 19th, the FBI requested assistance in the search. By this time, 75 people from various agencies were involved in the search. The state police had seized 2 vehicles. One was a 1996 Ford Explorer, owned by Justin, and the other was a silver car, owned by Justin's girlfriend Courtney, who was also present on the night of the disappearance. On Wednesday evening, Justin made his first statement to the media. He was calm and claimed he did not know what happened to Isla. Justin also said that he and his family would support the investigation and do everything possible to find Isla. Justin said that Trista had agreed to let him raise the child. Justin also said that Trista was incapable of caring for Isla. As of day 10, a $30,000 reward has been offered for anyone who can provide a lead to Isla's rescue, and 330 leads have been followed. The operation also involved about 50 volunteers from the Search and Rescue Association. The sheriff has transferred the investigation to the state police's Major Crimes Unit. At that time, an announcement was made that the case was no longer a search for a missing girl but was being treated as a criminal investigation. In the early days, Justin tried to avoid the media but later appeared more frequently. During an appearance on the Today's Show, Justin claimed that Isla had been kidnapped and wanted the kidnapper to return Isla. When asked about Justin's silence in the early days of Isla's disappearance, he justified himself by saying that he thought Isla would return. He also claimed that the police had advised him to stay away from the press. The police explained that this was only told to him at first. Later, the police encouraged Isla's parents to continue to appear in public. In late January, police revealed a major discovery. Isla's blood was found in multiple locations throughout Justin's home. In his 1996 Ford Explorer, they discovered a child seat in the back with Isla's blood on the left shoulder strap. In Isla's bedroom, police found blood on some of Isla's princess pink sneakers on the floor next to the crib, as well as on the doll's face and arms. This suggests that Isla may have tried to clean the blood from her mouth with her toy. Additionally, a blood stain was found on the living room sofa. Most of the blood stains were concentrated in the basement. A pool of Isla's blood stained the center of the mattress that Justin shared with Courtney. Justin's sneakers were also found with Isla's blood on them. Police also discovered blood splatters on the cement floor around the bed and on the walls. These splatters matched Isla's height. Additionally, experts determined that some of the blood splatters in the house were likely caused by Isla coughing, suggesting that Isla's injuries were both internal and external. This suggests that Isla may have been severely injured and may have been brutally attacked. Police said the bed sheet was used to clean Isla's blood. When they learned this information, Trista and her family were shocked and could not believe it. Police warned them that the evidence that was about to be revealed would be even more horrifying. Luminol tests were performed on the house, revealing blood stains that were not visible to the naked eye. Photos taken at the scene left Trista in great pain. After viewing these photos, she left the police station in a state of panic. The police said there were more photos to show her, but Trista refused to see them. She said she had enough. According to reports, when police showed Justin and his family the photos, he had no reaction. After learning of the police information, Trista shared with the press that despite her feelings of grief and helplessness, Isla's father, Justin, Alicia, and Courtney were still walking down the street as if nothing had happened. In September 2013, Trista wrote a bombshell letter to the press about the evidence and photos she had been given by the police. She was tired of waiting and wanted to rekindle public interest in Isla's case. In the spring of 2016, a group of journalists went to Justin's mother's house. Alicia opened the door and the journalists asked about the blood evidence. Justin's mother explained that Isla was lactose intolerant and had been vomiting. However, a quick internet search shows that common symptoms of lactose intolerance are gas, bloating, abdominal pain, and diarrhea, while nausea and vomiting are listed, but they are not the most common symptoms, let alone vomiting blood. Then, in 2017, at Trista's request, a judge officially declared Isla dead. Based on her father, Justin, reporting that Isla had gone missing on December 17, 2011, Trista and her attorney then filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Justin. By that time, Justin had disappeared, and he and his attorneys denied any wrongdoing, arguing that there was no concrete evidence. Earlier this year, 2023, a judge granted Trista's petition to include Phoebe and Alicia in the wrongful death lawsuit. Justin is facing civil charges for murder. Additionally, Justin faces charges of breach of parental duty of care for a minor. Both Trista and her attorney know that they will not receive any financial compensation from Justin. That is not the goal of the lawsuit. Their goal is to get information and facts out. There are many strange things about Isla's disappearance. While Isla was with Justin, he called the friend who sold him a $25,000 life insurance policy on Isla a few weeks ago. It is worth noting that Justin stayed at this friend's house while detectives investigated Isla's disappearance. Claimed that Justin had not been involved in the child's life during the 9 months of pregnancy and when Isla was just over a year old. Trista also revealed that she had received strange messages from Justin on the day he brought Isla home. He mentioned being afraid that someone would try to kidnap or take Isla away. The last time he said something similar was around December 11th, 6 days before Isla was reported missing. After Isla went missing, the messages became more surprising and confusing. The end of the case. Poor Isla is still not found. Those responsible for Isla's death. Still no punishment. Investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Xavier Dupont de Ligons. Xavier Dupont de Ligons, born March 9, 1961. He is the eldest son of the French Count Bernard Hubert Dupont de Lignes and his wife, Genevieve. Xavier had a younger sister named Christine. Xavier's parents were very wealthy. Xavier's mother, Genevieve, claimed to have received messages from the divine, which she wrote down during her creative writing sessions. Her strange beliefs developed into teachings about the impending apocalypse, and she founded a religious sect called the Church of Philadelphia. The group consisted of members of the aristocracy, whom Genevieve believed would survive the apocalypse and participate in the renewal of the world. Despite his father's aristocratic title, Xavier had little interest in the French tradition. Instead, he was fascinated by luxury, high-end cars, and Xavier loved the United States. Xavier's lavish lifestyle was financed by his mother through substantial donations from members of the sect, who vowed to keep their activities secret. In 1974, Xavier met Emmanuel Teneur on the beautiful island of Bra. They formed a friendship based on mutual understanding and respect. It is said that at that time, Emmanuel confessed his feelings to Xavier, but despite his rejection, their close friendship remained unchanged. 2 years later, Xavier met Agnes Hodanger in Neuilly, a suburb of Paris. Agnes was born on November 9, 1962, and Agnes was deeply religious. She worked as an assistant at the Blanche de Casse Catholic School in Nantes, where she taught catechism. Although information about Agnes' family is not widely available, there are many sources that indicate that Xavier and Agnes formed a very close relationship. The relationship developed into a short-lived romance before they decided to separate. In 1990, Agnes gave birth to her first child, Arthur, from a non-coercive relationship. Soon after, she and Xavier got back together, rekindled their love, and decided to marry. Xavier adopted Arthur as his son. 2 years after the breakup, they welcomed the birth of their second son, Thomas, who was considered the heir to the family. To commemorate this important event, Xavier chose Emmanuel as the first person to support Thomas. After Thomas, the couple had 2 more children, Anna and Benoit. The family of 6 lived happily. Xavier showed himself to be a loving father and his children excelled in school, opening up a promising future. Agnes passed on her faith to her children and took them to church. Around 2000, in accordance with their interests and wishes, Xavier moved his family to the United States. Xavier, a reserved, charismatic, and multilingual man, believed he could easily integrate into the United States. However, this project failed, resulting in significant financial loss. Upon returning to France, Xavier was left in a large amount of debt after several failed business ventures. Xavier was described as a salesman in some investigations. According to French media reports, financial problems had been a major concern for Xavier for many years. One of Xavier's failed projects was the importation of plans from the United States into French. In addition, Xavier also started a small business but found only limited success. These businesses included hotel and restaurant guides for sales representatives, a loyalty system for restaurants, and an association called the French Federation of Commerce. Xavier was also listed as the manager of another business that has not been clearly disclosed. Eventually, the business's accounts were few, and by 2003, Xavier had hired 6 sales staff. Xavier's work was often Monday through Friday and brought in less than $4,200 in reported annual income. The mounting financial problems began to strain Xavier's marriage, perhaps due to the usual disagreements in marriage. In 2004, Agnes wrote on a French forum about the challenges she and her husband faced, notably that Xavier had told her that the collective death of the entire family would not be a disaster. The financial situation worsened, and by 2009, the mounting debt had taken a serious toll on their relationship, forcing them to temporarily separate. During this time, Xavier sent Agnes several letters blaming her for the family's difficulties and the debts they were facing. This emotional stress affected Agnes, causing her to lose her sense of direction and suffer from insomnia. During this difficult time, Xavier sought help from his friend Emmanuel, who came from a wealthy family and had inherited a fortune from his father. Emmanuel was always ready to help Xavier financially. Emmanuel not only lent Xavier money, but also financed his trips and co-signed the purchase of a house. With Emmanuel's help, the Xavier family lived in a small wooden house on the outskirts of Nantes in the late 2000s. However, after settling down, the neighbors found Agnes to be stubborn and not easily put up with her husband. But behind closed doors, Agnes faced personal problems. She felt Xavier was too slow and unloving, and sometimes even abusive towards Agnes. She was also frightened by the way Genevieve, her mother-in-law, controlled Xavier. She described Genevieve as a mentally ill mystic and was extremely fearful. On January 20th, 2011, Xavier's father Bernard died. Xavier hoped that his father's death would result in an inheritance, which would help him solve his financial problems. However, Xavier was shocked. When he went through his father's possessions, he found nothing of significance. The remaining items included a few pieces of paper, a rifle, a name tag, a ring, and some cash, which Xavier promptly took. A few hours after his father's death, Xavier withdrew cash using his father's card. On February 2nd, he obtained a gun license, and on March 12th, he purchased a silencer for his rifle. During this time, he practiced shooting a rifle in the garden, looking at a balloon on a support stand. Emmanuel visited and tried shooting, finding nothing unusual. Xavier explained that the silencer was to avoid disturbing the neighbors. On Friday, April 1st, Xavier and Emmanuel went to a shooting range together, where Xavier's rifle was the focus of attention. The next day, Emmanuel called Xavier 5 times and they talked for almost an hour. Sunday, April 3rd. That night, Xavier, Agnes, and their children watched a movie and had a nice dinner at a restaurant. Everyone in the family was there, except Thomas, who was studying at a Catholic school and living in a nearby dormitory. After the outing, the family returned home and were seen by neighbors. Some family members also exchanged text messages with friends and acquaintances. That night, Xavier used drugs to put his wife and children to sleep, then shot and buried them in the garden. He did the same thing with the family's Labrador. Xavier called Agnes's workplace and said she was sick. He then contacted Arthur's school and said Arthur had been in a motorbike accident. He then contacted Anne and Benoit's school and said they were sick. In the afternoon, Xavier sent a letter to the restaurant where Thomas worked, saying that Thomas would resign because his father had been transferred to Australia. However, Xavier still had to deal with Thomas. On Monday, April 4th, Xavier contacted Thomas and had dinner with him at a restaurant near Thomas's university dormitory. After the meal, Thomas returned to his room exhausted. The next day, Thomas received an urgent text message from his father, saying that Agnes had been in a bicycle accident and was in a coma at the hospital, prompting Thomas to go to Nantes immediately. At midnight, a friend of Thomas's received a text message from him, saying that he was at home watching a movie with his father. Thomas was probably dead by then. About an hour later, Xavier emailed Emmanuel, arranging to meet up soon. Emmanuel responded, reminding Xavier that he had the power of attorney and the keys on the boat. Xavier went in and out of his house and even left a note on the door asking for no more mail to be delivered. Xavier then withdrew cash from an ATM, which was captured on security cameras. He paid with credit cards at restaurants and stayed at hotels under his real name. As Xavier's perfect escape began, the neighbors began to notice worrying signs. The once open windows of the bungalow had been boarded up for days. The 4 children of the Xavier family were no longer seen playing outside. The dogs were no longer heard barking, and Agnes was nowhere to be seen. All disappeared without a trace. Concerned neighbors began investigating and contacted the police. When police arrived, they discovered a nearly empty refrigerator with only a few jars of jam left. In the kitchen, a mop still had food on it, and a ring was placed on the living room table. Guitars were on the sofa, but no one was home. Police found empty picture frames, and the closet was empty of clothes. In the midst of the mystery, on April 9th, a letter appeared, sent to Xavier's family and friends. The letter claimed that Xavier had been hired by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration and that the family had gone undercover as part of a witness protection program, explaining why they had suddenly disappeared and had not communicated. Suspicion and concern grew among neighbors who sensed something was amiss. Fearing for the family's lives, they urged the police to investigate further. As the case gained media attention, more details emerged. On April 15th, security cameras captured Xavier entering a small hotel near Cannes. He parked his car, picked up a bag, and disappeared into nearby woods. This was the last time he was seen. Police returned to the family home Xavier on April 21, 2011. There, they discovered a new plot of land under the terrace. When they dug, police found the bodies of Agnes and her 4 children. Each had been shot 2 to 3 times and were wrapped in bags, covered with religious symbols, and carefully buried in sacks of quicklime. The family's 2 Labrador retrievers were also found buried. Despite a thorough search, no traces of blood, fingerprints, or DNA were found. Xavier became the most widely circulated person in France because of his alleged murder. His image appeared on every news bulletin. However, it seems that Xavier has mysteriously disappeared from the face of the earth. Autopsy results of 5 victims showed most of the bullets were shot in the head. In addition, traces of sedatives were found in the bodies of the children, which confirmed the hypothesis that they attacked while they were sleeping. A remarkable detail began to appear around Agnes. In the master bedroom, police discovered a device that Agnes used to control her sleep apnea, which had stopped working at 3:27 a.m. on April 4th. Because of the close relationship between Xavier and Emmanuel was called in for questioning by the police. Emmanuel cooperated with initial investigations. When Emmanuel was questioned about the exported rifle, Emmanuel initially knew about it. However, upon further investigation, the police discovered many inconsistencies in Emmanuel's testimony. They soon realized that Emmanuel was not being completely truthful. A crucial step occurred 24 hours later. Just before noon, Nantes police raided Emmanuel's apartment and seized Emmanuel's laptop. Emmanuel then revealed the real information about Xavier's export rifle. Xavier's mother Genevieve also attracted the attention of the police during their interviews. Genevieve was evasive and denied any knowledge of the Philadelphia church. The police investigation was fruitful. They discovered a copy of a complaint filed years ago by former members of the cult who fled in fear after Genevieve offered to have sex with all the men to conceive. This revelation about the cult, including the wealthy members who provided financial support, led the police to believe that this environment may have provided Xavier with material support. As a result, all former members of the Philadelphia church were questioned, and the police monitored the cult members, hoping to detect any indiscretions in conversations or emails. When the police examined the computer hard drive, they discovered many email exchanges between Emmanuel and Xavier. Some of the emails were particularly revealing about the relationship between the two. One email sent in the early morning of April 6 attracted special attention from the police. These accumulated details led investigators to the crime in which Emmanuel may have assisted Xavier in his escape. However, the police team's work has yielded results. They discovered a copy of a petition obtained years ago by former members of the sect. These people fled in fear after Christine offered to have sex with all the men to identify the chosen tie. The important revelation about this sect, including the wealthy members who provided the main financial support, has helped investigators better understand the work. They believe that this environment may have provided Xavier with the necessary support and substance. Therefore, all former members of the Philadelphia church were examined and followers of the sect were followed, hoping to find connections through conversations or emails. Despite efforts, no murder weapon was found. Xavier's cell phone records helped police track his movements in the country. Xavier's last known trace was recorded on April 15 from a security log. Based on the type of bag Xavier was carrying, police suspected that he may have been carrying a weapon. While everything suggested that Xavier might have committed suicide in the forest, the police conducted a thorough search of the dense forest, but without any results. This led to the hypothesis that Xavier might have sailed the boat to another country. Therefore, an international arrest warrant was issued on May 4th. The Nantes police contacted the National Fisheries Monitoring Center to verify whether Emmanuel or Xavier owned a motorboat or a sailboat. The police did not find sufficient information, but Emmanuel was summoned to the Nantes police station for further questioning. When the police asked Emmanuel about the sailboat, Emmanuel claimed it was a coincidence. Emmanuel explained that Emmanuel had given Explorer permission to open his safe in case anything happened to Emmanuel, and that the key to the safe was hidden in a model sailboat in an apartment. According to Emmanuel, the safe contained Emmanuel's will. Despite some suspicious coincidences, the police released Emmanuel. At this point, Emmanuel was only considered a witness. However, the police decided to put pressure on Emmanuel because they suspected that Emmanuel was a possible accomplice. A key discovery was made when police examined all the checks paid to Xavier's company. A $4,200 check signed by Emmanuel, linked to a previously undisclosed bank account in Monaco. Police quickly requested account records, but due to Monaco's strict banking secrecy laws, they would only respond to requests from their own regulators. On September 28, 4 police officers returned to Emmanuel's home. After a long wait, Emmanuel showed up. Emmanuel's apartment was sparsely furnished, with empty liquor bottles scattered around, suggesting that Emmanuel lived a very isolated life. Emmanuel told the police that Emmanuel had not received any letters or phone calls from Xavier. In 2015, a journalist claimed to have received a letter from Xavier stating he was alive. However, after conducting handwriting, DNA, and fingerprint analyses, the letter did not provide any new information. A tip-off about a monk resembling Xavier led police to raid a monastery in Rab Brun-sur-Aran on January 9, 2018. After a thorough 2-hour search, they concluded it was a case of mistaken identity. Then, on January 18, 2019, Emmanuel died of a heart attack. That same year, authorities arrested a man they believed to be Xavier at Glasgow Airport in Scotland, only to discover it was a case of mistaken identity. Speculation has it that Xavier may be hiding in South America, specifically Argentina, where Xavier can help him avoid being noticed. Despite the passing of the years, the Church of Philadelphia still exists, with members who have been part of the church for nearly 40 years, living in seclusion from the world. Since 2011, the case has been shrouded in rumors and speculation, causing it to stall. Ultimately, Xavier was never found. The perpetrators responsible for the deaths of Agnes and her 4 children have still not been found. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Michael Wayne Jones. Michael Wayne Jones was born on May 1, 1981, in Brattleboro, Vermont. His life was complicated and difficult from a young age. Michael witnessed his parents repeatedly physically and mentally abusing each other, and he himself was also subjected to this abuse. When Michael was young, his father went to prison for unclear reasons, leaving him feeling empty and deeply affected. His mother remarried and had another son, Dana, bringing some happiness to Michael's life. However, their home life remained troubled. Michael's stepfather had trouble maintaining stable employment, which put a financial strain on his mother, forcing her to work 2 jobs to support the family. The stepfather was aggressive toward Michael and Dana. He used physical punishment. This has created an atmosphere that makes people feel scared and controlled. Michael was harshly punished for small mistakes, such as being late to school, and was often locked in a shed and subjected to sexual abuse. Michael's difficult life did not harden him. Instead, he showed kindness and a strong instinct to protect others, particularly his younger brother Dana. He is often the one to admit mistakes and take punishment for Dana, which brings the 2 brothers closer. Dana admired Michael's courage and love. Michael's stepfather was extremely controlling and rarely allowed him to interact with other children. His mother was too afraid of her husband to stand up for Michael or herself. This created a home environment that was isolated, secretive, and oppressive. With no outside help, Michael and Dana suffered ongoing abuse. The neighbors suspected that something was wrong in the household. In a desperate attempt to escape, Michael ran away from home but didn't know where to go. He was eventually found by authorities and shared the sad story of his family life. Unfortunately, no one helped him with his situation. Michael had difficulty expressing his genuine emotions, instead concealing them beneath a facade of indifference. He struggled with depression in his teenage years, which significantly impacted his mental well-being. However, at school, he found some relief from his struggles. Despite being introverted and feeling lonely, having responsibilities helped distract him from his difficult home life. Fortunately, Michael met Dorothy, a local business owner. Dorothy introduced him to her daughter, and although the daughter's name is not known, but Michael formed a strong bond with her. As time passed, their friendship blossomed into romance, navigating its share of highs and lows. This relationship brought out Michael's gentle, thoughtful, and cautious nature, revealing a more nuanced side of his personality. Dorothy was happy to see Michael in a new light, but at the same time, she felt concerned. She observed that he became uneasy whenever it was time to go home. Despite her daughter's frequent visits with Michael, he made a concerted effort to keep her away from his residence. Concerned by these signs, Dorothy decided to have deeper conversations with Michael. Michael eventually opened up to Dorothy about his concerns for his mother and brother's well-being. This enabled Dorothy to recognize the emotional burden and suffering that Michael was experiencing. After finishing high school, Michael enlisted in the United States Navy, which marked the start of a new chapter in his life. The Navy instills in him a sense of direction and purpose within a highly organized environment. As Michael developed a strong affection for the Navy, he realized that he had made the right choice. His newfound sense of happiness is largely due to his close relationship with his teammates. Although he would occasionally drink, Michael was always responsible and showed up for work, proving to be a calm and composed individual. During this time, Michael was dating a colleague. However, he quickly realized that the relationship was unhealthy when she became violent towards him. This brought back painful memories of his childhood. As his depression worsened, he realized he needed to end the relationship. Following the breakup, Michael dedicated himself to furthering his career. He pursued specialized training in combat medical care, which ultimately led to his appointment as a medic in the Marine Corps. Afterward, Michael met Sarah, and they fell deeply in love, eventually getting married. After getting married, Michael resigned from the Marines so he could devote his time to supporting his wife. Sarah had a positive impact on Michael's life, encouraging him to make good choices. Together, they had 3 children, and Michael was determined to be a devoted father, providing them with the best possible upbringing. In their relationship, Sarah often took the lead in decision-making, but Michael was always supportive of her choices. In 2011, Sarah found a job in Orange County, Central Florida, and the family moved there. She worked at the Mount Dora Animal Hospital, which was managed by Bo Delaporte. After Michael had difficulty finding a job, Sarah convinced Delaporte to take him on. She also emphasized the experience Michael had gained from his previous job. Michael quickly settled into his new role and showed outstanding commitment. Michael emanated happiness and had a clear passion for his work. Michael's positive demeanor made him highly sought after by pet owners. His employers, particularly Delaporte, grew fond of him, and their relationship blossomed into a strong friendship built on trust. Delaporte even entrusted him with some management responsibilities at the animal hospital. In 2014, Delaporte hired KCI, a new veterinary technician. Born on December 23, 1986, in Ayan, Indiana, KCI was the second of 3 daughters to Nikki and David. She had 2 siblings, named Sarah and Brandy. She brought immense joy and positivity to her family, and also spread that energy to those around her. As KCI grew older, her love and concern for those around her deepened, fueled by her spiritual beliefs and moral principles. This gives her the strength to face life's challenges. In high school, KCI met Richard, and they were initially attracted to each other. However, as they dated, Richard noticed KCI's jealous and possessive tendencies. Her insecurity sometimes led to hurtful words and actions. Nevertheless, Richard remained patient and calm, and they eventually married after completing their studies. Over time, KCI's mother moved to Florida. Sarah and Brandy soon followed. Due to KCI's close relationship with her family, she and Richard relocated to Florida in 2009. After settling in, KCI worked occasionally as a transporter and sometimes as a dog groomer. She also began learning the trade of a veterinary technician. During this time, KC and Richard welcomed their first child, Cameron. KCI was devoted to Cameron's well-being and made it her top priority. A few years later, KC and Richard had their second child, Preston. The children grew in a happy environment filled with laughter and loving care. As KCI advanced in her veterinary technician career, she found a job at an animal clinic. There, she met Michael, who was Delaporte's right-hand man. Michael and KCI got along well, but Delaporte and Sarah both suspect that there may be something more than mere friendship between them. Even though both of them have families, but Michael found himself attracted to KCI. This attraction affected his focus and performance at work. Michael tried his best to satisfy KCI's needs. And she reciprocated Michael's feelings, and as a result they began an affair. Sarah and Michael decided to get a divorce, as did KCI and her spouse, Richard. After the divorce, Sarah was granted custody of her 3 children and relocated to Jacksonville. In contrast, KCI and Richard chose to share custody of their children, Cameron and Preston, according to a certain rule. KCI took her parenting responsibilities seriously and made sure to transport the children as agreed. Delaporte's frustration increased as Michael's work performance at the clinic continued to deteriorate. To make matters worse, Michael inappropriately approached other employees, overstepping professional boundaries. A betrayal occurred when Michael asked for time off, claiming his mother had passed away, only to use the leave for a beach vacation. Delaporte discovered the truth and subsequently terminated Michael's employment. Seeking revenge, Michael burglarized the clinic, stealing money, computer equipment, and even a gun. Delaporte identified Michael as the perpetrator and contacted the authorities. With KCI's assistance, Michael escaped to New Mexico but was eventually caught by the police. After serving a short prison sentence, Michael was released. Despite Michael's past actions, KCI remained devoted to him. The couple moved in together, and Michael became a stepfather to Cameron and Preston. Eventually, in 2017, around Halloween, Michael and KCI got married and started a new life together in a 2-bedroom trailer. Although the space is small, the affordable rent makes them feel grateful to have found a place where they can be together. In the same year, they welcomed their first child, Mercalli, followed by Ayana the next year. As their family grew to 4 children, Michael took on a job as a construction laborer to support them financially, while KCI dedicated herself to being a homemaker. She took great joy in every stage of her children's development and sought ways to capture those special moments. This led her to create a YouTube channel where she shared milestones of their family life. At first glance, their life seemed perfect, with Michael appearing calm and KCI's laughter frequently punctuating their videos. However, their relationship was not as it seemed. Behind closed doors, the couple frequently argued, and their disagreements had become a persistent problem. KCI's distrust of Michael led her to regularly check his phone, and she became suspicious whenever Michael worked late hours. A heated argument broke out between them on the night of July 10, 2019, while their children slept. The argument started when KCI discovered a message on Michael's phone that made her believe he was being adultery. The confrontation quickly turned violent, with KCI grabbing a baseball bat and pushing Michael. Michael then took the bat from her and, in a state of blind fury, he repeatedly struck her until she died. Michael put KCI's body in a plastic bag and hid it in a closet. He tried to clean up the scene as much as he could. The next morning, he took steps to prevent the children from finding out what happened. He then put KCI's body in his car. To avoid raising suspicion, Michael continued to post on KCI's social media accounts in the following days. On July 26, Michael sent a text to Richard, pretending to be KCI, asking him to take care of Preston and Cameron. Michael also texted KCI's mother, asking her to care for Mercalli and Ayanna. When Richard arrived to pick up Preston and Cameron, he found it strange that KCI was not there and expressed his concerns to Michael. However, Michael dismissed Richard's concerns, saying KCI had left town for a few days. KCI's mother had a similar reaction when she came to pick up Mercalli and Ayanna. Later that day, Michael called Sarah and told her that he and KCI were separating, and he needed to take care of the children while she worked. He then picked up the children and took them to his home. During the drive, the children noticed a strong, unpleasant smell in the car, similar to rotting meat. Michael continued to visit his children at Sarah's residence for 2 weeks, driving back and forth between his home and Sarah. Meanwhile, the body of KCI remained hidden in his car. As the days went by without hearing from her daughter, KCI's mother grew increasingly worried. On August 10th, Richard returned Cameron and Preston to Michael. This time, KCI's absence was even more noticeable, and it increased Michael's concern. During their brief conversation, Michael apologized for causing Richard and KCI to divorce, and acknowledged the challenges Richard went through in his relationship with KCI. As the new school year approached, Michael realized that the absence of the children and KCI would likely raise suspicions among the elementary school staff. This realization led to a tragic turn of events. On a night that remains unspecified, Michael took Cameron out of bed and suffocated him, then placed his body in a suitcase. The next morning, he did the same to Preston, putting his body in a garbage bag. A few days later, the owner of the trailer park where Michael lived served him an eviction notice, giving him 2 weeks to vacate the premises. Amidst this dire situation, Michael went to pick up Mercalli and Ayanna. When KCI's mother saw Michael again without KCI, she became overwhelmed with anxiety and had a nervous breakdown. Her mind was consumed by a single question: where was her daughter? Michael was driving with his daughters, Mercalli and Ayanna, when he was suddenly overcome with guilt. He felt trapped and decided to turn himself in at the police station. However, when he reached the door, he changed his mind and turned back home. Upon returning, he filled the bathtub with water and tragically drowned his daughters. After their deaths, he placed their bodies in a plastic container. As Hurricane Orion approached Florida in early September, a state of emergency was declared, prompting many people to seek shelter. Michael took advantage of the chaos to transport 5 bodies, including his wife and children. He loaded them into his truck and headed north to stay with Sarah. During his stay, Sarah noticed that Michael never contacted KCI or inquired about the children, which made her uneasy. However, she chose not to ask questions due to her awareness of the marital issues. After the hurricane passed, Michael's neighbors reported a strong, unpleasant smell coming from the trailer to the property owner. The owner checked the trailer, first looking through the windows and then entering it. Although the furniture and personal belongings were still there, the smell was overwhelming, but nothing else seemed out of the ordinary. KCI's mother grew desperate as she tried to make sense of her daughter's disappearance. She suspected Michael might be in trouble with the law and hiding, which could explain why her daughter was also in hiding for her own safety. Rather than waiting, KCI's mother contacted the sheriff's office and requested a welfare check at Michael's house. When officers arrived for the welfare check, they found the house empty but appeared to have been recently cleaned. However, a strong smell of decomposition lingered, contradicting the presence of cleaning supplies near the entrance. Before the officers could investigate further, the property owner arrived and asked them to leave. Meanwhile, with the bodies still in his vehicle, Michael drove out of state into Georgia. He stopped near a wooded area and disposed of the bodies of Cameron, Preston, Mercalli, and Ayanna. As he continued driving and checked his GPS, Michael lost control of the vehicle and crashed. Although Michael escaped without injury, the vehicle was severely damaged. The police quickly arrived at the scene of the accident and were immediately hit with the strong, terrible odor coming from the wrecked truck. They find a suitcase in Michael's truck, and when they open it, they discovered KCI's gruesome body. Michael broke down and confessed to his heinous crimes on the roadside. He also revealed the location of the children, leading to his immediate arrest. KCI's family was devastated by the news, feeling as though their world had shattered. In shock and grief, they still do not understand why Michael could have so brutally murdered his wife and children. Sarah, in particular, felt an intense hatred towards Michael, a sentiment she had never experienced before. With a search warrant and new evidence in hand, investigators went back to KCI's house. Upon entering, they were met with a strong, unpleasant odor and a noticeable reddish stain on the carpet. The agents began collecting evidence from the scene, while the autopsies were being performed to gather more information about the tragic incident. Forensic results showed that Cameron sustained a fractured jaw with no other visible signs of trauma. But a towel was in his mouth. Preston was found with a noose around his neck. Mercalli and Ayanna were found in a small plastic bag together, which also contained a baby bottle with Ayanna's name on it and a pair of pink sandals. The cause of death for Mercalli and Ayanna was determined to be drowning. KCI's autopsy results showed a severe blunt force injury to the front of her skull and face, but no other signs of trauma were found on her body. When questioned by authorities, Michael remained calm and provided precise and honest answers. Michael even thanked the police officers who arrested him and said he felt he had no other choice. Michael provided a clear and chronological account of incident from the fight with KCI to his subsequent arrest. When asked about his motives, Michael said that his actions stemmed from the harsh life circumstances he endured, which led him to believe that his decision was the only possible solution. The tragedy profoundly affected everyone involved, but it was particularly shattering for Sarah. She found it extremely difficult to accept that her children had been exposed to and had lived with someone like Michael. As a result, Sarah struggled with mental health issues after learning the truth. Michael was subsequently charged with second-degree murder for KCI's death and 4 counts of first-degree premeditated murder for the deaths of the children. Michael pleaded guilty to the charges, bypassing a trial and moving directly to the sentencing phase. A 12-person jury then had to decide between 2 sentences, life imprisonment or the death penalty. The defense strategy focused on Michael's difficult childhood and mental health issues, highlighting various psychological disorders that may justify a reduced sentence. However, state prosecutors argued that the extreme brutality of the case worthy a death penalty. In January 2023, the jury unanimously recommended the death penalty, as required by state law. After a brief 99-minute hearing, the judge formally sentenced Michael to death. He also received a separate sentence of life imprisonment without parole for the murder of KCI. Michael's lawyer quickly filed an appeal following the sentencing. However, on April 28, 2023, the judge rejected the appeal and confirmed the original sentence. Prosecutors were pleased that justice had been achieved for KCI's family. Michael is still in prison, awaiting his scheduled execution.